Aloha and welcome to my channel. I'm JayDreamerZ and this is a special segment called Truth in Movies. What you're going to do is watch the movie with me and break it down. I like to break down movies and I see a lot of esoteric and occult symbolism. Another story, a deeper level that's speaking straight to the heart of all who watch, all who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. We pick up on signs and omens like the earth is speaking to us. And what better movie to watch than The Truman Show? The Truman Show resonates at such a deep level that it's actually a part of many college course classes in academics today. So today we're going to talk about the different levels of The Truman Show. Hello, everybody in the chat. Thanks for the birthday wishes. I appreciate it. Today's my birthday. I can't think of anything I would rather do than to spend time with the Good Vibe Tribe and to talk about some of the most important concepts that I believe that we can talk about, especially given the time that we live in with the apocalypse just around the corner. So speaking of the apocalypse, let's talk about this movie real quick. I'm going to assume that most people have seen this movie. We're going to talk about it on 3 levels. The first level is breaking out of our loops. Humans in this world trapped and stuck in these loops that we go in, breaking away from the expectations of the world and living our true life and becoming our true selves. That's the internalization of the movie. The second one is the opposite of a dystopian movie. It's actually a utopia. Now, our world bounces back and forth from dystopic to utopic, or a dystopia to a utopia. Right now, we're headed towards the end of the dystopian cycle, which means a neutral point will come, which is called the polarity shift. And then everything is set free, but it works its way up to a utopian society, which is just as bad, as you'll see, as the dystopian society. It has its own flaws and whatnot. So where sometimes we will break down movies where characters are trying to find the North Pole. That's under blue sky conditions. They're trying to get to the North Pole, etc. But this one is almost the opposite, and it will speak to those who will be in that utopia in the future at the North Pole. And we're going to talk about the North Pole and the hidden lands at the North Pole a lot throughout this movie, especially and specifically the beams of light that shoot up from the land at the North Pole. We're going to go into more detail about that. So we're going to talk about those 2 levels. And then the third level is the cosmic entity level. All of our quintessential stories and religions and myths and legends and movies and books and fiction and fantasy and sci-fi, all of it. All going back and hearkening to cosmic events that happen during something that I call the plasma apocalypse, where we see cosmic plasmic discharges coming up and erupting as fountains from the earth, touching the sky as beams of light and sky pillars, and the tentacles and the dragons coming down from beyond our sky during an event that happens. And then we interpret the things that we see up there in the sky, and we personify them, and we tell stories, and those become the legends and the myths of old, and we forget what they actually were. So we believe that the personification is the reality, and then when we don't, we internalize it. So we're going to take it back to an actual, literal, physical, and historic quintessential story form. With our cosmic display that happens during the apocalypse. So it's called The Truman Show. I hope you all, I'm going to say thank you in advance for all of the well wishes and happy birthdays and everything. So I super appreciate it. Let's watch The Truman Show together. Okay, so The Truman Show starts off. Paramount, brought to you by Paramount. Now immediately they're going to show you the dome, right? With the stars all around it, the dome of the world, the vault of the sky. That's a huge and crucial part of this movie. We're going to see the dome of the world at the end of the movie. And then, of course, right there in the middle, they show you a high and lofty mountain peak, right? That represents Mount Meru at the center of that mysterious island that has now disappeared off of our maps of the North Pole, but it used to be there. Okay, we start off, we see Truman. Truman is on TV and he's talking to himself in the mirror. He's looking at the mirror and he says, "You're going to the top of this mountain." Now, remember, they're speaking to us, right? There's different levels to this. The lowest level, I guess you could just be entertained and amused, right? You don't have to get anything from it. That's totally fine. But they just showed us this mountain under the dome. Then they show Truman, which later on, he's actually going to draw a dome around his head. And he says, "You're going to the top of this mountain." So I believe that the movie is speaking to me on one level talking about an exodus that happens, right? There's two different types of exoduses that happen from the red sky event and the blue sky event. In the blue sky event, the exodus is from the outside world towards the North Pole, towards the Holy Mountain, towards Mount Meru or Rupas Nigra at the center of the world, where there are these inner earth openings, etc. The other exodus is leaving the North Pole. For those who have been there and they're stuck there, for a very long time during the red sky, right? When everyone's minds are all in tuned, everyone's got telepathy and stuff, everyone's sort of all on the same page. It's the exact opposite as the dystopian society, as I talked about before. And they want to do their own exodus. Some of them want to branch out and to leave. Now, on another level, he's also talking as the blue beam itself. I'm going to talk a lot about the blue beam, so if you're unfamiliar, please check out my Plasma Apocalypse playlist. I've got many different videos explaining what the blue beam of our world is. It's the inner earth energy that is now retracted, so we don't see it, but one day will expand after the polarity shift, and light will emit and spring forth from the fountains of the deep of this earth. So we got Truman. He's saying, you're going to the top of this mountain. So he's speaking to himself, but he's also speaking to us. Okay, I believe that there are those of us that have a remnant of that blue beam as spirit form inside of us. Some may be mixed and some may be more of the red. Now we go to Truman's wife. She is an actress. Truman is the only person in this world, in the Truman Show world, that is not an actor. All of his reactions are genuine, right? But everyone else is in on it. Everyone else is an actor. Now, his wife is just an actress, right? Welcome, Zenwin. Notice how she's wearing the black and white checkered shirt. That implies somebody who is a fractalverse traveler or a space traveler, if you will, or an angel, a fallen angel, any other kind of angels, same type of thing, the black and white symbolism. And she says, my life is the Truman Show. Right? Because she's being interviewed and they're like, what is your life? What's your life like outside of the Truman Show? She's like, no, I'm in here. That is my life. My life is the Truman Show. So I'm speaking to all of the blue beam remnant out there. All of us who have almost like you're a part of some lost tribe, right? Your identity has almost been erased and you feel a hearkening. You feel an urge. You feel a pulling or a tug that something is different in this world. Being us, we are different, right? And there's this calling, right, to go to a place of safety during the times of the apocalypse, at least for some of us, right? So anyways, her life is the Truman Show. So she represents all of those people who are not of the blue beam essence, the good people, I'm just going to say, right? She's sort of almost like an NPC type of a character. And I'm going to talk a lot about NPCs in just a bit in the future. Now we go over to Marlon. It's Truman's like best friend. And they're asking him about the show. And they're like, oh, so, like what's fake, what's real? And he says, it's all true. It's all real. Now, keep in mind, they're talking about our world, this earth that we live on right now, your world, right? A lot of people would say, oh, it's all fake, especially when you jump into a conspiracy-minded rabbit hole with no bungee cord to ground yourself, right? Then you just start freaking out and panicking, thinking that every single thing is fake. But he says, no, nothing here is fake. Everything is real. It's just controlled. Everything is merely controlled. Everything in our world is controlled. They manipulate the weather, they manipulate the traffic, they manipulate the laws, they manipulate the energy, they manipulate your time, your schedule, where you go, your actions and reactions, your emotions. All of it is being influenced, not controlled, but influenced, guided, manipulated, gentle nudges to get us to go into a particular direction like lemmings and sheep, but for a purpose. And that brings us to the Truman Show. Right? So it's sort of meta. We're looking at the intro to the show and the intro to my show. All right, so Truman comes out. His address is 36. His entire town represents the North Pole, the land at the North Pole, the Garden of Eden, a paradise, a utopia, however you'd like to see it. I'm just going to say the North Pole and the land at the North Pole because I feel like being very literal is very helpful in this instance. So 3-6 or 3 6s, the 666, the spiraling of the plasma, etc. I believe his door also has 3 X's on it. If so, I can't really see it from here. But the 3 X's indicate off limits or only for the approved, only for those who are approved. So he comes out, he says, good morning. Now Truman represents the blue beam that erupts, the main blue beam, okay? On either side of this island are two mountains, two holy mountains, if you will. One acts as a cathode, one acts as an anode. Those are electrodes in that complete a circuit, basically, at the top of the world. And that circuit forms an arch, or an electrical arch, or an arc of the covenant, which guards over the North Pole Island itself, which means that there are barriers to go up there or to leave there whenever the blue beam's up. Thanks a lot, GQ. Appreciate it. Anyways, so Truman, sometimes that blue beam is seen as the squatter man. It is seen as this earthly pole that holds up the sky and keeps the sky from falling on us. It's seen as the squatter man, or you'll see this symbolism like the frog that holds its arms up. Sometimes it's a bird that holds its arms up and it's looking one way or another, or sometimes both ways. And sometimes it has an arm up and an arm down because it's plasma and it is shifting and moving up there in the air, which is one of those cosmic displays that I was talking about. And he says, oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, right? So he doesn't know this, but he's actually addressing everyone in every time zone. He's being watched, right? He's being watched by the rest of the world. So in ancient religions and texts, there are these stories of the watchers, those who watch. Now, I believe many people interpreted that as they were watching over mankind as overseers, and there may be truth to that. There very well may be. But then there's something different. There were the watchers, those who were watching for this blue beam. Their job was to watch it, to see how it fluctuated, to see if there was any sign or omen that it might disappear or it might go away, because they did not want it to. They wanted to keep it going. They wanted that flame to be lit eternally. Why? Because it provides an abundance of vitality and life and growth and crops and strength and long life to humanity. So there was the watchers of the eternal flame. They also, when the flame disappeared and went down into the underworld, which we're going to see here in a minute, represented by this dog that's coming up, they watched for its return. They still wait and watch. They look for the signs and the omens to see when their beloved flame will return. So Truman, acting as that cosmic blue beam, starts his day off, and he has an obstacle, which is this dog named Pluto, which is a black and white dog, which indicates the black and white symbolism of the traveler, right? Of the fractalverse traveler. But the dog's name is Pluto, and it basically always tries to stop Truman. That's directly related to that beam of light that I was talking about, because the beam of light is represented as various gods and goddesses, or demigods as well. Heroes of old, men of renown, women of renown. And many times the story goes that those gods either went into the inner recesses, the hollow recesses of this earth, down into Sheol or Hades or Tartarus or these various forms of the underworld, and was trapped down there for a time, or died and was buried down within the confines of the earth, and then one day would reemerge again and come back up into the world, because that's what happens. The energy goes in cycles. One cycle, it emits energy. The other cycle, it charges energy and it goes back inside. So Pluto represents the constant threat of pulling that blue beam back down into the underworld. Then all of a sudden, out of the clear blue sky, we've got something that's just dropping down from the sky. It's some sort of metal object, and it crashes down. I can also say this, in many movies, when you see glass breaking, it's symbolic of the glass dome of the sky breaking open in the apocalypse about to unfold. So usually you see glass breaking, and that's whenever all the crazy stuff starts to happen in the movies symbolically. So this crashes down, and it's some sort of a light bulb, and Truman says, holy cow. He goes over to it to pick it up. As you can see, they put Truman, and you will see this quite often, between two columns, between two poles or two beams, two straight lines, because it's the 101 symbolism. It's the three lines together. And I'm going to explain this in a minute, so if it doesn't make sense, it's okay. But there's more than one blue beam, right? There's the arch that shoots up and out. It's an electrical arch that shoots up and out of the anode and the cathode of those witnesses, those surrounding holy mountains, right? And then they meet in the middle where that blue beam is shooting up, and then they cross. You'll see it in a bit, but that's why Truman and other savior-type Christ-like figures are shown in between two other poles or crucifixes or staffs or whatever it may be. So he goes over to check it out. He picks up the light, and it says Sirius. Sirius is a star. So what this is saying is this is a star that just fell from the sky. However, the star is not what he thinks that it is, right? It's not way out there, super far away, burning as a giant gas ball or whatnot. It's just a light that just fell from the sky. Now, this is also a prophecy that the stars will fall from the sky and they will crash down to the earth. If what we're taught in mainstream academics is true, that the stars are that far away and they're that gigantic and they all crash down to the earth, guess what? The earth is going away. So whoever is religious and interprets that text either has to really super, turn that into a metaphor or something, because they can't take it literal. Because if they do take it literal, then they're going to have to change their minds about what is up there in the heavenlies, what's up there in the sky. And consequently, what our world is. We'll have to reconsider our geography, right? So he looks up at the sky, shows you a pole with a light on the top. This is also going to be a lot of Truman symbolism, or the squatter man symbolism, the blue bean symbolism. Usually there's different stages to it, but when it first comes out, it is just a straight line or a pole with the light of the depressurization point, or the circle of light that exposes the brightness of the heavens behind it, right above it, right? And that is the North Pole. That is the pole at the top of the world. All right, so this light falls down. You can see Truman's little stage city that he lives in right there. We're going to take a closer look at that from above in a bit, and it's amazing. The guy on the radio says, "Newsflash, this just in. An aircraft in trouble began shedding parts as it flew over Sea Haven a few moments ago." So he's just listening to the news. What's happening every single turn that Truman makes in this movie? Anytime he gets close to finding out about the true nature of his world or himself, right? Or others, everyone in that world, everyone reacts. It's like they can sense what's going on, and there is an equal and opposite reaction, which is to try to cover it up, try to hide it, try to make up some sort of a story, put it into the media so that it will change our perception, right? So Truman listens to the radio. He thinks it's pretty weird, but he's going about his day. This happens to a lot of us, and you're going to see this happens to Truman all the time. I'm going to come back to the distractions in a bit. But here you can see the set of Truman's world, Sea Haven, right, which is a safe place in the sea. We're going to come back to the sea symbolism in a bit too. He's walking to work. He's into insurance and whatnot, and he sees these twins, and they always grab him and they put him up against this billboard or this poster or whatever, which is in the movie advertising for some made-up company or organization, so that in the movie, the people that produce the Truman Show can make their money, right? Because they don't stop it. It's always live. So they grab him and they push him up against this sign, right? Now check this out. This is Truman, right? And he's going to always be shown with the twins. That is the two witnesses. Remember, the true man is that true blue beam, right? That shoots up from the middle of the world, and there are two witnesses on either side. Those witnesses are seen as being twins almost all of the time. Usually there's a good twin and a bad twin, right? Or a black one and a white one, or you know what I mean? They're opposites of each other because it's an anode and a cathode. It's positive energy and negative energy, and he is in the middle of them. He always experiences or runs into them. So they push him up against this particular sign that says Kaiser Chicken. This is really interesting. Free range Kaiser chicken, no less. This is not real. This is a prop. And because it's a prop, what it is context for a message, an underlying hidden esoteric message that's being given to some of us watching this movie now. So let's break down what these words mean. First of all, free range means you're free to go, right? You're free to walk about. You're free to go wherever you want to, which is a huge play in this movie. That we are not allowed to be free-range humans. We are not allowed to go wherever we want to. There is the guise and the pretense that you can go wherever you want to, but in reality, you can't. And we'll see that Truman shares that with us. Kaiser is the exact same word as Caesar. Zenwin, hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Kaiser is the same as Caesar, right? So it's the same as like Caesar and Kaiser and Khazar, etc. It means ruler, it means king, etc. And then chicken. Now, chicken has come up quite a bit symbolically in many of our truth and movies. We're going to do a review of the word chicken and why that's so important here coming up in the future. So anyways, they push him into this sign. They show the chicken to our faces. They show that there's this king over the chicken, whoever they are. And then he goes about his day. There's a revolving door. He doesn't want to go into the revolving door, which represents the loop of his life, the loops of our lives. We're stuck, purposefully inserted into these various loops. Some of us can't recognize them, so it's hard for us to escape them. But there are these things that keep coming back around in our lives. We keep going in the same circles over and over and over again. This could also represent dying and then coming back to life in another body, reincarnation, etc., living in those types of loops, being stuck in this world to learn a particular lesson. So he doesn't like the revolving door. He doesn't like the loops that he's stuck in, going to work, coming home, saying hi to going over his day, going to bed, waking back up, going to work, just being a slave in the world, not able to enjoy himself. So he allows everyone else to go in. He's like, no, you go ahead. I'm not really that anxious to get there, right? And there are those of us who can relate. We don't want to go to work. We don't like these loops. We're starting to recognize it. And some of us are trying to figure out, you know what? There's a way to get out of this. There's a way to break free. This movie is going to give us some breadcrumbs. All right. So he goes to his desk. We see his full name now, right next to the magic 8 ball, looks like. Truman Burbank. Let's jump into the etymology of names. Truman Burbank. First one we're going to go to is Burr. So I'm going to zoom in on this for just a bit. So burr is directly the root of bristle, basically. And it comes from an ancient word that means point or spike. So keep that in mind. Truman Spike Bank, basically. Right? A point, a rod, a beam, same thing, right? All right. So Burr Bank. Now, what does bank mean? Let's zoom in and check this one out right here real quick. Bank essentially goes back to the root word that means hill or rising ground. So Burbank means a spike or a point coming up out of rising ground or a hill, right? Some sort of a spike out of a hill, this is all symbolic for who Truman is, right? He represents that blue beam that comes out of Rupus Nigra, which is this tall, lofty black mountain. Bank. There's a few variations here. This one says rising ground in a sea specifically. So rising ground that comes up out of the ocean specifically, which is exactly what it looks like if you look at the ancient maps that are a few hundred years old of the 4 lands at the North Pole, those 4 little islands that create one circular large valley island with a huge crystal lake in the middle of it. And in the middle of that crystal lake is the Black Mountain or the inner earth entrance. All right, so he jumps onto the phone and he asks for directory assistance for Fiji. He wants to go to Fiji. He's getting tired of living in this exact same area, the same city over and over. Why Fiji? Why did they write that into the script? We'll figure it out if we understand what Fiji means. Fiji is a variant way of saying VT. VT. What does VT mean? So if we type in VT into the translator, we get vine, basically. So he wants to go to the vine or the island of the vine, right? The vine is symbolic of the North Pole. As you'll see, there's a vine, there's the beam that shoots up, it spins around because it's plasma and it's twisting up into the air like Jack's beanstalk. That is the plasma column, it is the plasma beam, it's all the same thing, and symbolically that's where he wants to go. He wants to go home, which is the center of the world. Now, the inverse of that is this is a utopian dystopia, basically, and he wants to get out of there. So the best place on earth, he says, Truman, did you see this? And then he gives him the big old 666 or triple spiral, right? Which is really what that is. It's not 666. It's just a triple spiral, right? Which means the perfect spiral or the spiral from the heavens or the cosmic spiral. And it wraps up in the eye right there. That's what this is for, okay? It doesn't mean Satan or devil or anything like that. It is symbolic of the eye in the sky, which is seen as the devil or whatnot, right? And then the spiraling plasma that comes out of that hole or that opening in the sky from the plasmasphere wrapped around our world. So this sea haven place is the best place on Earth. That is the North Pole. That is the Garden of Eden. That is the top of the world. So he says, do you have a listing for Lauren Garland? He really wants to go visit this girl that he had a crush on in high school named Lauren Garland, who lives on the island of the Vine, or Fiji, right? So let's look up where Lauren comes from. If we look it up, it's directly related to the name Lawrence. And Lawrence means bay trees, basically, from Laurus, which is just lore, whatever lore is, with the O's at the end, which means strong. So strong lore, whatever lore is. And it says, see laurel. All right, so laurel, we're going to zoom in a bit. So bay trees from Laurus, we saw that one. Laurel. So Lauren is directly related to the word laurel. And this is, we also broke this down during the DeLorean of Back to the Future Truth in Movies. So from the Latin laurus, or a laurels, but they keep on repeating themselves. So what I'm doing is I'm sharing with you my own studies right now. If I go to related words and we check out what the related words are, basically it's this one right here, L-A-U-R, laurer. And there's different variations, different spellings in Romanian, L-A-U-R. That is also lauver. The U is also pronounced like a V. So it's very interesting, right? They don't really know what lauer means. Okay, I've looked all over the place. There's a lot of, far-reaching guesses. But I would say, if I were to guess, it's related to the word lover, which is lover, right? Somebody who loves. And it also is related to lave, or laver, or lavese, which means to wash over, or to cover, right? To cover is also related to Christ, which means to cover with something that makes you glisten or gleam when you're anointed, basically. All right, so anyways, that was pretty a lot, right? That was the origin of Lauren, or related other words. Mad Mystic, hey, welcome. Now let's check out Garland. So the girl that he likes, right? Her last name is Garland. What does Garland mean? It means to turn or to twist. So she comes from the island of the Vine. Her name means to turn or to twist. And she's related to the crowns of laurel that they put around people's head are all twisted like that, and they wear that crown. Anyways, so they don't have a listing. So he's like, well, do you have a Sylvia Garland? So let's check out what Sylvia means, right? That's her real name in the movie. Now, this is interesting. It's going to get real meta on us because we're going to talk about Jim Carrey's name as well. So Sylvia comes from the Latin silva, which means wood or forest. So if we say her name is Sylvia Garland, it means twisting wood of the forest, basically, or the world tree. That's where he wants to go. He wants to go home, right? This is us. This is us in the world that we live in with our loops and our jobs that are keeping us prisoners. And we just want to get out of here. We just want to go home. We just want the world to make sense again because we need the energy back. We're lacking energy. We're tired. We're broken. We're weak. And that energy is what we're looking for. God, whatever you want to call it, right? We need that energy back in our lives. So his boss comes up to him and is threatening him to not meet his quota. The second that he starts looking for the twisted world tree, Sylvia Garland, right? And he says, you need to meet your quota. So the world starts putting pressure on us every time that we start to pick up on these little breadcrumbs or these little puzzle pieces of truth. So he sends them off on this mission to go to some other place. They really don't want him to go to some other place, and they know that he's going to reject it. But what they're doing is they're solidifying the conditioning or the programming that they've been giving to him this entire time. So he goes to this place called Harbor Island Ferry Terminal, which I think is sort of a play on words because he's the ultimate fairy or like magical creature or creature of light, basically. And it says terminal, which means last or the last one, right? So he's the last fairy, basically. So the guy says one way or return. And he's like, return, because he's afraid of the water, right? They made Truman afraid of the water, and there's a very good reason, right? There is a cosmic quintessential reason why certain gods are afraid of the water and they don't want to touch the water, right? It's holy water or whatnot. So he says, return. I plan on returning. This is the blue beam talking. The gods always promise to come back, right? They leave and they always promise to come back. Well, this one is the most important one, or one of the most quintessential ones, I should say, that leaves, goes down into the underworld and promises to return one day, which it does. So he starts to try to go over to the water, but he sees this boat down there, so he turns back. He's like, no, forget it. I don't want to go. Now we turn to his wife. This is Truman's home life, right? His wife bought him some present, and then she starts going into this weird spiel where she says, oh, look, it never needs sharpening, dishwasher safe. It's a chef's pal. And he's like, oh, okay, that's great. He actually says wow, which is really interesting because wow originally is just 3 vavs. It's vav, 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 which is 666. And that's what you say when you say wow, believe it or not. That's where that comes from. It's interesting because he's working on his little garden there, and this is actually the exact place where he ends up escaping or making his escape later on in the movie. So is he actually planning something now and he's starting to pick up on things before we get into any evidence? Remember, he did see the light fall down from the sky, so he might be working on his little escape plan unbeknownst to us, right? So he goes to hang out with one of his buddies, right? One of his buddies is wearing a referee hat right now, which means he's one of the rule makers, right? And he's an actor. He's not really his buddy. However, check this out. He is an actor that has been trained since childhood. Some of these actors have been in this Truman Show world since they were children, and this has become their life. However, they're detached from the reality of the world. They understand that there's a falsity to it. They understand that there's a pretense to it. These are known in the world today as those types of actors. I got to be careful what words I use right now. I don't want a big Wikipedia article under this video. But there are types of actors out there that are grown from birth, right? This is not difficult to achieve. And this is the theory. They are grown from birth. They're birthed in the underworld, basically, or in underneath, deep underground parts of the earth. And they are conditioned from birth to play various roles, to switch those roles at any time sometimes, or to play lifelong roles as well. And he is one of those actors that's been in Truman's life for a long time. And then he says, that's a beer. Now check this out. Right? Every single time that Truman gets close to the truth, this guy's entire job is to basically have him drink alcohol, right? Instead of focusing, instead of being sober-minded and thinking about all of these weird things that are happening, he's like, hey, let's just drink some beer, buddy. Good old pal. And this beer is called Pavel, I believe it's called. Basically, Pavel is the same as Paul or Paul. Pen means head. Paul means little. Basically, it means small. So when you drink this beer, your head is small. You have a small brain, small head. You're not thinking, basically. Pen, just like Pennsylvania, it means head. It means the top, or sometimes it just means head. Paul means small. I've got it right there for you. All right, so he says, I'm thinking about getting out, Marlon. Truman wants to get out, right? He doesn't know it. He doesn't know out of what quite yet, but he knows he wants out of this situation, these loops. He's starting all the weird stuff he's starting to see. He wants to escape. He just doesn't understand what he needs to escape from. He says out of Sea Haven, which is his world. He wants out of the world. This is many of us. Many of us are going to want out of this world, or at least want out of the world the way that it is. We want the world to change, right? He says, you've got a great job, Truman. Now that's another way of reeling us back in. When you're ready to go, when you're ready to leave, and there's this exodus that happens on either side of the coin, there will be those programs that are out there that try to keep you from escaping, to keep you running those loops, to keep you in your programming spot, right? So that you can continue to contribute to whatever else is going on as a part of the whole. And he says, you have a great job, right? Some people are given really nice jobs or lots of money or reasons to stay into the material instead of becoming explorers and finding out the deeper secrets of the greater vast universe. So he's like, no, I want to go to Fiji. I want to go to the other side of the world. And he's like, all right, so when are you going to go? And basically Fiji, he says, is like on the furthest away that you can go. Now, We talked about Fiji being the island of the vine or the blue beam or the world tree. Maria, hey, thank you. Thank you very much, Maria. He wants to go to Fiji, which is symbolically the Garden of Eden, the North Pole, right? And he says it's as far away as you can get. That is exactly how the North Pole was described by ancient historians. They said it was at the westernmost extremities of the earth, beyond the pillars of Hercules. One pillar, two pillar, in the middle would be going beyond, right? That's where the island is. He says, so when are you going to go? Be careful if you're one of these people, right? Because those people who are not going to go with you are basically like agents in the Matrix. If you tell them when and where and stuff you're going to go, it's going to leak. As you'll see, it happens to Truman. It's going to leak out, and they might try, to set up shop to stop you or something. So that's a huge clue being tossed our way. And he goes, it's not that simple. It's not that simple to just up and go. It takes money, planning. Like, he's talking to me right now. I hear you. I hear it. I receive it. Thank you very much. He goes, I can't just up and go. Well, guess what? That's not true. He chooses not to just up and go, which is going to change his mind in a little bit. Now it zooms out. We show you Sea Haven, right? You can see that the huge moon is out and everything. There's going to be some prophecy coming up about the moon a little later on in the movie. But Truman wants to think, so he goes to the ocean. It comforts him, even though he's afraid of it. And he starts thinking about when he went out on a boat trip with his dad, and then they encountered this huge storm. Truman wanted to push on, but his dad's like, I think we should head back. But Truman's like, please. And he goes, okay, all right, let's go. So they're leaving Sea Haven, which, if Sea Haven is symbolically the North Pole, there is always a constant storm around the North Pole. Why do these ancient myths and legends talk about a constant storm around this mystical hidden island? It's because of the constant pressure difference, I believe. There's probably many different reasons, but at least one of those would be the constant pressure difference, because around in the middle of that island is an inner earth entrance, and there is a differential in pressure between the outer world and the inner world. So because of that, we have a pressure system that's constantly circling around the exact center, hiding that island. So you have to get through that constant storm, basically. So they're going through it. They encounter the constant storm, which Truman will encounter later on. His dad does not make it, so he's on the beach, reminiscing. The water malfunctions. It's supposed to be rain everywhere, but it only rains on him. This is also very interesting because some of us who are very sensitive, I'll say, in tune, some of us, when our emotions get very worked up, the weather acts crazy. The weather starts to act crazy. Some people won't relate to that, but some will definitely understand. So Truman starts seeing the malfunctions of his world, right? As we go on, he's starting to pick up on things, and he's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Once he figures out some of these breadcrumbs, it makes him the happiest that he seems to have been in a very, very long time. Now, he goes back home to talk to his wife about things. She's reading this gigantic book, which is very interesting. I think that this might harken to gigantism. And the book is called The Dream Machine. They don't have children or anything. I don't know why she's reading this weird giant kids book looking thing, but it makes her look extremely tiny, doesn't it? And it's called The Dream Machine 2. So the Dream Machine is basically getting into the fractalverse and what people call simulation theory, that we're all living in a dream, right? And I believe that there's a lot of truth to that. She says, you're talking like a teenager, because he's like, oh my God, like we need to go to Fiji. Let's get out of here. Let's escape. We can do it. He starts to believe that this is the right thing to do because he sees these signs, like these malfunctionings. The world is malfunctioning. It's falling apart. It's looking a little bit different. It's starting to look strange to him. He's excited. He's like, he's pumping himself up. Like, let's go. Goes to his wife. She is one of those people who is a part of the show. Okay. Right? Now, there are people like that are out here in our world that are part of the show. They don't have to know that they're a part of the show to be a part of the show. You know what I mean? So she's like, you're talking like a teenager. He says, well, maybe I feel like a teenager. This is symbolically saying he has a strong spirit, okay? There are those of us who have a strong spirit inside of us, right? We sound young. We look youthful. I mean, today is my birthday. I am 43. Believe it or not, and I'm not saying that I look super, I'm not trying to brag or nothing, but I'm just saying, like, there are those of us that have a buildup of life. And so he feels like a teenager. And that's what the blue bean does, is it is literally the fountain of youth. It restores youth and vitality to the world. She says, we have mortgage payments, Truman. See, reeling them back in, trying to reel them back in. The plasma prophet. Oh, thanks for the birthday present. Thank you. 3 of diamonds. Ooh, I'll check that out. Thank you. So she says we have car payments, right? All of these things that are mental roadblocks to doing what Truman wants to do, which is to leave the world, to go to other places, to experience other realities, right? She says, what, you're just going to walk away from all of your financial obligations? Those are little invisible barriers or spells. They're web form spells that are cast that don't exist except for up here in our minds. They have changed and redirected how the electricity in our brains work, which open or close pathways for us when we get to certain decisions that we want to make, right? It's called an action potential in a synapse. A synapse will it will store all these different chemicals and electrical signals and whatnot until they're needed, which is basically experience that is stored until it's needed to release to make a decision for the rest of the brain. Anyways, that got pretty deep right there, so let's keep on going. He says it would be an adventure. He wants to go on an adventure, and she goes, I thought we were going to try for a baby. Ah, family. That it becomes a hard one for a lot of people, right? They don't want to leave behind their children or their kids or, their brothers or sisters or their husbands or wives or whatever. And so that becomes a major obstruction, I guess is the right word, right? Something that's keeping us from adventuring, something that's keeping you from going and making that trek or that journey, or just breaking free from your loops of life, or however you'd like to see it, right? So he goes, honey, you want to be an explorer? Oh, that's so cute. This'll pass, right? You're just going through a phase right now is what people try to say, especially whenever you're getting a little older in life like Truman. People think that you're just trying to get your youth back or whatnot. There's all these excuses from the rest of the world why some of us should not transgress boundaries, why we should not leave the boundaries of your city or your state or your country or your world, right? On the larger scheme of things. We all think like this now and again. No, not all of them think like this. There are many, many, many people. The majority of the people in this world, from my perspective, seem to enjoy it here. They seem to love it here. They don't want to leave. They don't want to go out. This is their home. She says, let's get you out of these wet clothes, and come to bed. Distraction technique number 4, sex. She wants to try to distract him with the constant demand for like, hey, if I go on this adventure, I'm not going to be getting any for a while, basically. So that is also used against us. So beware of those things. This is the town of Sea Haven. Let's check this out real quick. Look at this. Oh, hey, I got a donation from 4D Stellated Hypercube. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Super appreciate it. All right, so check out Sea Haven. As you can see, it's an island, right? And it has a dome of water that goes around it. Just like in the opening of all the Disney shows, they have like that little dome over the castle. That's the same exact symbolism, right? It is inside of a dome itself, but two-dimensionally, they put that dome as the water that goes around. The dome is the barrier of water, as you'll see. We'll talk about that a little later towards the end. So Truman goes about his business. He sees another one of those actors that was supposed to have died somewhere else. Okay, this is real. I'm going to tell you this. I very much am convinced as of now, okay, that there are actors out there that are put in certain crises or situations or, extreme things that are going on where people are dying or hurt or injured, and they are seen and they are caught, and we have pictures and whatnot. And then later on, just like Truman, we see them in other places where they have no earthly business being. Right? It could be doppelgangers. That is a possibility. But in this case, it is exactly Truman's dad, an actor who did not actually die. It was just a falsity. It was just a story to trick Truman and to try to guide him and force his life into the direction that they wanted him to go in. Agent Orange, thank you. So he's like, oh my God, I recognize this guy. He's supposed to be dead. He's not dead. He's just acting, and he has been written back into a different part of this reality, right? Now, some people come and they stop him. What it actually is in the movie is the actor, the dad, after he died and he had his death scene, he snuck back onto the set, right? I don't know how people sneaking onto the set, but they're sneaking on. They're like walk-ins, you could say, right? So his dad sneaks back onto the set, and he recognizes him, and basically the producers are worried that he's going to tell Truman what's really going on. That's a huge deal, that you can't tell him what's really going on. These people grab him and they put him on a bus, right? And Truman's like, stop the bus, stop the bus. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's actually some Latin written on this town gates, which is these 3 columns, right? These 3 pillars that basically have this symbolism of the electrical arcing going from the outside one to the inside one, and then the outside one to the other inside one. And what it says here is unus pro omnibus, which loosely translated means one for the many, or one for the all, which is really weird because over here it says omnis pro uno, which means all for one. But omnis or omni means all. Omnibus is different. Omnibus, bus means box or container, right? So one for everyone in the bus or the box. Anytime you see bus, it's really just box. It's another way of saying box or container, right? All right, cool. So he goes home and he tells his family. That's the first person you want to tell as a truther, as a truth seeker, whatever it may be. That's one of the first people we go to. Oh my God. Hey bro, I got to tell you about this. Mom, did you know this? Did you hear about this? Etc. Right? We're so excited. We want to tell someone, and who better to understand than our family? He says, I swear he was dressed like a homeless man. I saw him. He saw this actor who was supposed to be dead, and he's not dead, right? And she goes, and then he says, you know what else was strange? Thank you, JJ. Thanks, man. I super appreciate it. You know what else was strange? A businessman and a woman with a little dog came out of nowhere and forced him onto a bus or into a box, right? And she goes, oh, well, it's about time that they cleaned up the trash downtown. So she's an actor too. She's a part of the official story. Okay. And there are people like that in this world, that they respond just like this when you try to open their minds or broaden their horizons, right? That's not their purpose. That's not their role. Their role is not to do that. Otherwise, they would be open to it, right? It doesn't mean that they would just believe whatever you say, but there are people like this that will only go with the official story. They will only go with that because that is their script. That is their role. That is their part to play. It is our part to play with them, basically, right? We are the players in the game, and they are the NPCs. So she says, you're just feeling bad because of what happened. You sailing off into that storm. But I've never blamed you, Truman. There's another way, right? They dig down and they try to mess with your emotions, right? She is blaming him. This is a complete upside down lie. I can't stand people like this. She says, I've never blamed you, Truman, but she's blaming him. Even though she knows the truth that he didn't actually kill his dad, because she understands there's a different story. She's trying to trick him. She's trying to create fear inside of him. She's trying to create internal boundaries or web form spellcasts inside of the mind and the emotions and the chakras and the energetic forms of Truman himself to keep him from leaving, basically. She makes him feel bad, right? The accuser of the brethren, it's called. She goes, and I don't blame you now. So he's all in his feelings. He goes downstairs and he gets out this red sweater of this girl that he had a crush on in high school. And everyone in the real world, okay, everyone is watching Truman. They're watching him because he's the star of the world. If he's the blue beam that shoots up out of the North Pole, everyone in the world can see that. Every single person will be able to see it, with exception. But for the most part, everyone can see. So every day you wake up, you can literally see some light form cosmic plasma discharge stick figure man or woman way off in the distance, however far away you are. Everyone watches the true man every single day, the squatter man, etc. So these girls are watching him on TV and they're like, they got rid of her, his first crush, but they couldn't erase the memory. Now there's this whole concept of erasing memory or worldwide amnesia that happens as well, which is a part of the plasma apocalypse. So we flash back. We find that his crush is this redhead, right? Now, as if Truman is the blue beam and he has a crush on some girl that wears red, there's always this blue and red symbolism where it's an ill-fated love. They can never come together, because if they do come together, it all falls apart, and the apocalypse basically happens, because that's when blue meets red, right? It also is symbolic of those who live in that utopian society wanting to leave the North Pole whenever everything gets too crazy and everyone's a little too connected and a little too into each other's business and stuff because of telepathy and other things. And they want to leave the North Pole, right? Which is the rest of the world is a red sky. It's a huge red sky everywhere. So that's the symbolism of that. I can also tell you, Chuck and Chambers, thank you. Hey, appreciate it. Chuckin', we're totally going to talk about your name too here in just a bit. Thanks for the birthday wishes. All right, so check this out. He represents the blue beam. So they put him into a role in high school with the word north right there pointing up, no less, right? His high school represents the north. His high school represents the world that he lives in, because there's only one high school in that entire world. It is the north. That is Sea Haven. That is where he lives, at the North Pole. So they put north there, and then the color is blue. Has to be. Now, she also wears this little bracelet that has these little green dots, which represents the Aurora Borealis as well. So he's looking for his true love, which is the center of the world, which is the inner portion of the world, the heart energy of the world, etc. She personifies that and represents that. She's definitely given him the eyes, we'll call that, right? And his future best friend and his future wife are totally just there to distract him, and says, Truman, you've studied enough. And he says, no, I've got to commit this to memory. He wants to remember. He is all about trying to remember certain things, right? The character. What this means symbolically for us is that we need to recollect. We need to remember. There should be a reckoning, right, of our past, of our ancient oblivion, as I call it. But everyone else just wants to distract. They want to keep us away from the reality of the cyclical ending and then reforming and rebeginning of this world that we go through. So they're just trying to distract him. He wants to commit things to memory, whereas most people would just want to forget. And then his buddy, to try to sweeten the deal, is like, oh, let's go drink some brewskis together, right? He wants to put something to memory. He wants to study. They want to keep him from studying. This represents independent research. He's doing his own work. They want to keep him away from all that. Come party, come have fun. Come with us. And then he sticks to it. Only when he sticks to it, if he would have left with them, he never would have saw this girl's hand. His crush, right? John Lombardo. Hey, thank you. Says happy birthday. I appreciate it. So if he would have went with him and stopped his independent research, he never would have seen his true love or his crush, right? So he sees her hand right there. He looks up. She's wearing red. She's actually got little red flowers all over her shirt. Red flowers almost always represent the rose of the sky, the carnation of the sky. It goes by different names, right? But it's basically the red opening up in the depressurization point in our sky. So he looks down, he sees his crush, the redheaded girl that's totally red everywhere. She's blush, she's wearing red flowers, a red sweater, the red thread, by the way. The red thread is also symbolic of the times of magic and the influx of energy that comes into our world under the red sky. So she's definitely into Truman. She loves Truman. She's all about it. She's got the eyes for Truman. And he's like, how come you don't want to talk to me? And she goes, I'm not allowed to talk to you, right? So she's one of those people that knows the truth, but she's not allowed to talk about the truth because she understands that there are repercussions. There are people that will come and get her. And he goes, I like your pen. Now, that's interesting too. Anyways, he says, I like your pen. And it says, how's it going to end? She represents the apocalypse. She's decked in red. She's got the red flowers and everything. She represents the meeting or the cosmic union of blue, the true man, or this cosmic stick figure in the squatter man in the sky. Atlas, all of those people. Atul is also where that comes from, the serpent in the sky. the vine in the sky, etc. The meeting between the earth and the sky is the cosmic union. And that's what's going on between this flirtatious episode between Truman and his crush, Sylvia. He goes, I was wondering that myself. When's it going to end? Right? That's what we're talking about. This is an apocalyptic movie. We're talking about the end of the world. The end of Truman's world is the end of our world and the beginning of our world at the same time. She says, if we don't go now, it won't happen. He's trying to ask her out on a date, right? He doesn't understand he's actually getting closer and closer to the truth. So she tries to hide from all the little Big Brother cameras everywhere. And she says, if we don't go now, it won't happen. This is another concept. The movies are speaking directly to my heart, and they're saying, you want to go? Go now. Like, don't wait to be distracted. You'll see everyone else in this movie is like, oh, you want to go somewhere? Well, give it a few months, let's save up. Let's make some plans. This woman represents the truth. And she says, you need to go now. Do you understand? And then they zoom into her eyes looking at him when in reality, she's looking at us. She says, so what do you want to do? Pretty deep. That one hits me hard. All right, so he's like, let's do it. So he takes off to the beach. They go have a good time and they share a kiss. And then all of a sudden, some cars start coming down into the beach. And she goes, they're pretending, Truman. Truman, do you understand? They're all acting. This is not even my real name. My real name is not Lauren. It's Sylvia. My name is Sylvia. She represents the world tree, but also the magical forest that is said to exist at that island at the middle of the world. It's said to be enchanted, basically. So let's take a look. Sylvia, we already mentioned, means of the woods. Now her actor dad comes out and he's like, oh, she's got schizophrenia. She has episodes. Hypnotism. We tried that. Shock therapy. Now I want to mention shock therapy for just a minute. Okay. There was a time in our past, and this still happens, okay? It still happens today, but there was a time when it was more in the public view, when those of us out there who had wild and crazy ideas or theories or experiences, when we shared those with people, most people would be committed to some sort of medical agency where they would shock people with high electrical charges and numb your brain to the point where you were a zombie. If you don't believe me, for a great truth in movies example of that, watch The Wizard of Oz Part 2, The Return to Oz. That is exactly what happens to Dorothy. She gets back from Oz and really starts telling people like, hey, oh my God, like this happened and this happened. Her grandma and grandpa that seemed like the sweetest old people in part 1 totally put her into one of those medical institutions and had her committed to shock therapy, and she was going to get her brain fried. So she had to escape once more and go to Oz. A very real thing that has happened and used to be a part of our history. It still is, but it's just covered up more now. Or they lightheartedly joke about it. But shock therapy is real, and I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's just that it's misused quite often, and the opposite is used. Instead of using electrical impulses to rejuvenate the brain, they do it in the opposite way, and they actually take your memories and your functionality away. JJ, wow, thanks, man. Super appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so Truman, his true love was taken away. This represents the apocalypse, okay? We represent Truman. The apocalypse has been taken away from us. You don't talk about Bruno. You don't talk about the end of the world. Why? Oh, it's too scary. Oh, we're all comfortable in our lives, in our loops. Or some people have a lot of money and power and position or tracts of land or whatever it is that they don't want to lose. They don't want to acknowledge that one day, the day of reckoning will come. The day of judgment will come. The day of Jubilee will come, and that sign will be seen for all to see, and the slaves of the world will all be set free, and all debts will be erased. All people will be free. That has been taken away from our collective memory. It happens over and over again. So he starts taking these little pieces out of magazines, different sources, to make one picture. He has a collage. He's taking his own puzzle pieces. Now, each one of these little rips in these magazines of this girl's face, she represents the apocalypse. She represents, the red-haired goddess up in the sky, Medusa, etc., right? And him meeting her represents the apocalypse, right? So he takes all these little sources, all these little pictures. This represents comparative mythology or taking a look, a vast, wide open look at all of our world's stories and legends and histories and everything, and finding what is similar and putting it together so that we can start building and recreating and reverse engineering a truer history for ourselves. And that's what Truman starts to do as he starts to figure out what it is that he's looking for, right? Now, in this particular area, he's looking for the eyes, which is like symbolic of the all-seeing eye, etc. The radio malfunctions, and he starts to hear people narrating what he's actually doing, right? They're like, he's driving down Main Street, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, that's weird. And then all of a sudden they catch on that he can hear their instructions. He can hear the programming, right? He picks up on it like Neo can see the coding, right? He starts to hear what's going on in the background. Sort of subliminally. He can hear the subliminal messages, basically. For him, they should be subliminal. For everyone else, they start holding on to their ears because it goes, wow, and they change these frequencies and it's super loud in everyone's ear. So you see all of the rest of the people. Remember, Truman does not represent an actual person. He represents, on the cosmic scale, a beam of energy, true spirit, true light, the breath of God, etc., that comes up out of the earth, right? Not an actual person named Jim Carrey or Truman Burbank or whatever names that they use, right? We're going to get to Jim Carrey too. Is he real? I'm going to talk about that. So this is one of the omens of the apocalypse. There will be a sound so loud, right? When these events unfold and the world depressurizes, the pressure itself is going to cause people to hold onto their ears. Every single one of these actors, which represents everyone in Truman's world, which symbolically represents everyone in your world, will all at the same time cover their ears, probably bow down to the ground and drop down as the pressure differential increases in our world. It's going to hurt in your sinuses, right? Some people will bleed from the nose or the ears or the eyes even, and it's going to hurt. So people will cover their ears, and that's what you see happening here, which is one of the omens. So what does the media do? They take what really happened and they print some false story. Obviously, that's not Truman's dad. That's some other actor dressed up like he's Truman's dad or whatever. Now, Truman starts to go to work, but he's had enough. He's seen too many signs. The world has been speaking to him a little too much, and he's been picking up on it, right? So he leaves the revolving door on this particular day, and he starts to look around. And they put him right in front of a pole. That's why I took a picture of that. Just like how I showed Doc Brown in Back to the Future. They showed him in front of the pole as well. So they got him in front of the light pole. They got him sitting in front of this pole. He starts checking it. He starts people watching. He starts looking at the world with brand new eyes. He looks at it again. He rediscovers his world. He's almost hit by a bus. And then he puts his hand out and he goes, stop. He makes everything stop. Truman, when he makes his appearance in this world as that beam that shoots up and then splits out and branches out at the top, following sort of the toroidal field of Birkeland currents, right? He sticks his arms out, everything stops, right? He stops the traffic, he stops the movement, he stops the action in this world when he makes his appearance. So he starts doing things unpredictable. He starts doing weird stuff. So he runs into this building that he never really has been in, I guess, and right behind him is an elevator. But instead of there being like a little elevator room in there, it's a whole back area and there is no elevator. So he doesn't see it yet, but he's like, yeah, I've got an appointment. And then the black and white lady in the background who represents she's traveling between worlds or between realities, right? He looks over and he sees that there is no elevator, that it keeps on going, just like Men in Black, where the back of the elevator was false, right? He looks and he sees past the wall that was supposed to be there. On the other side of the wall, it's much bigger, right? The room that he was expecting to see is much bigger. It's bigger on the inside. This is just like the TARDIS, right? It is representative of the walls of our world, aka the dome of our sky. When it recedes, whenever it opens up, whenever it breaks, whenever it cracks or bursts out or whatever, when you see what's on the other side, you're going to see it's much bigger and it will look much closer than little tiny dots and stars and whatnot, right? And there's good reasons for that, one of which is going to be the depressurization changes the optics in our world, which magnifies everything that's above us. Anyways, and plus it's really interesting. There's Native American legends that talk about how one day the sky falls. So everything out there that right now appears in our minds, at least, to be so tiny and so far away when it's really not, all of a sudden one day will be magnified as the energy of our world reverses, and it will look so big, but you'll see all of these beams of light shooting up out of holy caverns or cave sites worldwide, right? There's one major one at the North Pole, but there's many different poles that shoot out. The Native Americans talked about the day that they all had to hold up poles touching the sky to keep the sky from falling on them. All right, so they shut that door. They close it up because Truman saw it, and then they're like, "You're trespassing." This is another thing that they do to us when we start getting too close to the truth, is they just start physically trying to manhandle people, right? They've done that with Girolamo Sagato, who petrified human beings. They did that to Edward Leedskalnin, who learned how to move and shape and create megalithic blocks all on his own. They've done that to a lot of people. Probably Tesla and a whole host of others, right? All right, so he leaves that particular building, which is called Omnicom, and he goes out into the streets. Oh, here we go. Omni means together, remember? So Omni means all, and then com means together. Okay, so the place where he was called All Together. So they're all in accord. They're all in one mindset. I believe that this represents the two different sides, okay? The blue and the red. They both want you to be of one mind. They both have a hive mind. They both have a hive mentality. It's only us who are neutral in between those two that don't want to pick a side, who are a little different. So they're all together. They're all for one and one for all. It doesn't matter if they're good or they're bad. They just all are together, right? Now, there's all these little commands that are placed subliminally throughout the movie. For example, this one on the bus says to sit, right? It's an instruction like you're telling a dog to bow down, to sit, to stop, right? And that's those types of things are in our world all over the place. The movies is just one of those times, one of those things. So he goes to his best friend. Now, he went to his parents or his mom. Mom doesn't believe him. He's going to go to his best friend in the world, and he's going to tell him, dude, oh my God, the world's falling apart. The world is not what it seems. There's crazy stuff happening. I'm telling you, I saw the people on the elevator, but there was no elevator. There's no backing on it or anything. And then the radio was like literally saying everything that I was doing on the road. You know what I mean? And he's starting to freak out. So he confides in his friend. But his friend is an actor too. His friend is a part of this world. And his script is to not believe him, basically. But you see, this symbol right here represents the island in the middle of the world. It's called the Tet. It's a circle with a cross in the middle, sometimes with another circle in the middle of that cross. And that represents the island called Hill Valley, or the island of the mysterious island, the hidden island, the one that we've been talking about this entire time. And that's who he works for, basically, because this is a utopia, or it's seen as a utopia, like the perfect place to live or whatever, right? He says, Truman, look, this is one of your fantasies. So that's what we're told. You are going to be told, if you have a different view, an alternative view, if you're into fringe theories or alternative thought or philosophy even, the time is soon coming when you're just going to be told, no, everyone will dismiss it. Nobody will be open to it. You have to actually strive to find places like this that can still talk about these types of things before you're just instantly labeled crazy or a hater or somebody that is against the mainstream, right? And it becomes outlawed to have a differing opinion, viewpoint, experience, or theory. So he says, Truman, look, this is just one of your fantasies. Truman's like, I'm being followed. And he goes, oh yeah, who's following you? And he's like, it's hard to tell. They look just like regular people, right? Truman's starting to pick up on it. He hasn't picked up on it all the way because he's rushing to all these actors that he likes the most. They're just actors though. They're the ones that he likes the most. So he goes and confides in them. All he's doing is telling on himself, right? He's going to the people that are not. They're all a part of the system. And he says they look just like regular people out there, just like in the Matrix, right? He says it's when I'm unpredictable That's when they can't handle it, basically. So when we start being unpredictable, when we start going outside of their expectations and their programming, is whenever they start not being able to handle things, right? And you start seeing the world a little different when you start acting and thinking a little different. So he's like, we got to get out of here. You're going to hear that a lot from music and the music industry to Hollywood. You're going to hear that phrase repeated over and over again, because they're telling you the most important thing. They're repeating it. It's worth repeating. We got to get out of here. So he says, yes, sirree, your birthday only comes but once a year. Let's go party, basically trying to trick everyone, even though they all know what he's doing, right? But the reality is his birthday is coming, and he represents the birth of the Christ, the birth of the light of the world, right? His birthday is around Christmas time. Just like in this movie, it's exactly Christmas time. If you look really close, you can actually see that there's Christmas decorations, here and there. People are getting ready for Christmas and stuff. And Truman's birthday is coming up, which is right around Christmas time. That's one of the apocalyptic cycles when the blue beam makes an appearance, is around Christmas time. All right, so here we have this beautiful sky. His friend even talks about how beautiful it is, but it's unrealistic. You would not see this in our world today, right? So it's beautiful. They look up and they're like, wow, it's amazing, but it's fake. It's not real, right? Or at least it's not really what we're told that it is. It is real. As he says, everything is real. It's just controlled. So Truman's trying to talk about how he feels like a black sheep in the world. He feels like a loner. He feels like the world's all crazy and messed up, and he's the only one that sees it. He says, you ever feel like your whole life has been building towards something? His buddy immediately is like, no, I'm not that deep, Truman. I'm just here to distract you in a chill, laid back kind of I don't care way, right? So he's like, no, I don't. So Truman's like, I'm going away for a while. He makes another mistake. He starts telling his buddies and stuff. He's like, really? You're going to go away for a while? Tell me more. So they have that conversation. He goes back home. Remember, the powers that be have picked up on the fact that he wants to escape. He wants to leave the world, and they don't want him to. Now, if this represents the North Pole and the blue beam is going up, remember, those people don't want the blue beam to disappear. And they understand, at least I believe, according to my research so far, they have a better understanding about what keeps the blue beam up and what keeps it going. So they institute a lot of different rules and expectations and guidelines and stuff because they want to change what happens in the physical world to create the best atmosphere for that blue beam to remain constant, right? So for example, population control. That's one of the huge ones. I've already talked about that. So, you can check out my other videos, but that's one of the reasons why they want to do stuff like that. Now, she starts talking about having a baby, which is the exact opposite, basically. But he doesn't want to have a baby. They're trying to keep him and hold him down. They're showing him pictures of his past. Oh, remember when you did this on Earth? What a great memory. You should stay here and have more memories like that. And she goes, this is you at Mount Rushmore. And he takes a closer look at it. Now that he's starting to wake up, he's taking a closer look at everything. He's seeing these clues everywhere. You can see they put that star on his head too, right? Because he's the star of the show. He's the star of the world. He's the star of Bethlehem. He says, do you remember, Truman, when Dad was still with us, we went here? So he takes a look at it and he's like, wow, it looks so small. That's because it's fake. Okay, that picture in the movie is not real. And some people would just say, oh, well, that's very obvious. It's not real. It's just a set. But if you can transcend what's happening on the set of the movie and to the actor in the movie or whatever, and you can apply that to your own life, there is a setting that we're told. We're told what these things are. We're told how far away things are. And we're told that things are really big when they're actually really small. We're told that things are really small when they're actually really big. And it's basically, that talks about our world. She says there's a lot of other pages left for baby photos, and they're trying to get him locked in. They're trying to get him locked into staying here and not leaving the world. She's like, I want grandchildren, go make babies. All right, we got to take off. We've got someone's birthday to talk about. So they're going to talk about Truman's birthday, the light of the world, being born again. His wife is also wearing the black and white checker stuff again. A certain person's birthday, that's Truman. Now he starts to look at his photo album and he sees that his wife not only crossed her fingers whenever they were getting married. Check this out. Let's zoom in on it. So not only does she cross her fingers, but she's wearing her wedding ring on the right hand. So he sees that this was all a sham, that she doesn't really love him. She doesn't really mean it. It's like she was forced into this covenant. She was forced into this agreement, but she doesn't really make it. She's going to break that covenant, right? She's not true. So they zoom in on another scene. Truman's holding up a globe of the earth, and it's actually a radio. He's tuning it by twisting the North Pole. I kid you not, right? He's twisting the North Pole. Also, there's some vitamin D over here because they don't have like a real sun in that world. It's just a false sun. It's a sun simulator, you could say. So he starts to twist the North Pole, and asks his wife, about what's going on. He doesn't really trust her, so he follows her to her work, and she has to pretend to be a nurse. So he ends up following her. She pretends to be a nurse or whatever. Then he just leaves, and he's like, I'm going to a travel agency. I'm going to Fiji. Now look at what they do in the travel agency. This represents our world. Right? They tell you, oh, don't go to other countries. It's full of terrorists and you're going to get a disease and there's crazy wild animals and there's street gangs. And this is our world that we live in now. They tell us basically don't travel, right? They make it, they put the suggestion up here. Like, wouldn't that be nice? Isn't that a nice fantasy? But if you want to actually go explore, especially towards the poles, right? They will give you every single reason not to do that. It will be in the news. It will be in the movies. It will be all over the place in the newspapers. Stuff will start happening to you personally, to your finances, right? They'll make it very difficult, or they will mess with the energy near where you live and stuff, and they can actually influence people's emotions. It gets deep. They don't want people to travel. That's why this world is filled with borders. Borders upon the first border starts up here. This is the first border that they set up for new arrivals in this world. They put a border right here, boom. Then they put a border right here, boom, into the body. They try to put all this stuff into the body so the body's all messed up and can't function the right way. Then they put borders outside of the body. Then they put borders around those borders and more borders and more borders. The reality is none of those borders exist. There's one border in this world, which is the border of the world. Actually, there's two. There's the one above, and then there's the westernmost, which is the Pillars of Hercules, like we've talked about. Anyways, so he sits down, and they're like, it could happen to you, and they show this lightning going through the plane, which, by the way, not true. Like, you're not going to get hit by lightning inside of a plane because the plane is a Faraday cage, and it's a fully enclosed metal structure. So planes get hit by lightning all the time. But you're safe inside of it. If you've ever been on a plane and you went through a storm, you were probably hit by lightning, or at least the plane was. But it goes all the way through that plane and it goes out. So that's not like it's going through the wing. It's hitting the metal frame of the plane, traveling around it, and then going straight down looking for a place to ground itself. That is a Faraday cage. They make it look like it's a bad thing, but it's actually a good thing. So he's like, I'd like to book a flight to Fiji, please. I want to show you the symbolism that they subtly put in here. This lamp, you're going to see this lamp in other places too, right? But this represents Truman. It represents the beam that comes up out of Mount Meru. If you look up drawings and pictures and concepts and concept art of Mount Meru, there's a blue beam that shoots up out of it that gets wider and wider as it gets to the top and then eventually hits the sky, right? Also, there is an electrical concept known as an elf. Whenever like high above a storm, there are these jets. They call them blue jets, actually, that shoot up. It's plasma that shoots up. It hits the dome of the sky or some sort of interference pattern up there, and it spreads out. And you can actually see it if you look at these photographs of these elves up in the sky. And she's like, when do you want to go? He goes, today. I'm ready to go. Let's take off. Let's get out of here, right? Oh, I didn't notice that, but underneath the lamp, you can actually see the VOV too, sort of like the flux capacitor shape. Anyway, so he wants to go today. That's another symbolism. They're saying, hey, don't be lazy. Don't get ready. Don't make all these mental plans to go and travel the world or whatnot. Go. It's time to go, right? There will be a time and a place when I believe personally, I'm just going to take a time out. I believe personally that there are many of us that know what I'm talking about, that there is a trip that is coming up, that there is a place of safety in this world. And we've been alluding to it for a long time. And the movies and the rest of the world, the song of the world is singing, when the time comes, and there is an opportunity, go. Right? I'm not saying that the movie is saying pick up your stuff and go right now. It could be, totally could be. But for me, what I'm getting is when that window of opportunity opens, take that opportunity, right? Which is going to be when the world is distracted. So I'm going to give you a big old hint right now. If you're one of those people, there will be a worldwide distraction, something that's happening that's causing everyone else to look like they're, making these mass exoduses from their countries or from their states or from something like that, right? Or maybe they're all being kept inside, like some sort of, martial law or something's happening. But when the world is distracted, that's going to be the time to go. All right, so that's from me to you. All right, so he tries to leave. The bus driver's like, man, he grinds the gears. He keeps the bus from working because he's not really going to get him off the island. He's like, I'm sorry. There are people that are a part of this world that do feel bad, but they're stuck. They have to go according to their programs. They still feel bad, right? But they're not going to do anything about it. Like they feel bad for us, but they're not going to help out because they're bound to the script. So he goes home and he's thinking about things in his car. His wife comes over. The dude next door is like, what are you doing? He's just sitting in his car. So he's like, dude, come here, come inside, get in the car. So she gets in and he goes, look. Now he's talking to us, saying to look. Whenever they're talking to someone else in the movies and they say to look, they're talking to you. So it's a good idea. Something important is about to be said. He goes, I predict that in just a moment, we will see a lady on a red bike followed by a man with flowers and a Volkswagen Beetle. So they're looking into the mirror. Boom, lady on a bike, man with flowers. There it is, the Beetle. Oh my God. He goes, he's freaking out. He was a prophet, okay? This is why this is a big deal. He prophesied, he predicted, he made an accurate prediction because he understood something. Certain knowledge, secret knowledge that's supposed to be secret to him was revealed, allowing him to understand what's going to happen into the future. What was the secret knowledge? He's freaking out. Oh! He's like, yeah, because that's a good feeling. That happens to me every once in a while. And I will tell you, that's how I feel when I'm able to accurately predict things that are going to happen, whether it be in a movie or whatever. It makes me feel like $1 million because I've picked up on something, right? He goes, don't you want to know how I did that? I will tell you. The rest of the world, all the actors, all the NPCs, they don't want to know how you did that. They don't care. They actually feel the opposite. They get scared when you can do things like that. Okay, that freaks them out. They are not the ones to share that with. I'm just going to tell you now because it's not going to be a fun experience. Share that with others of the blue beam. Share that with others of the spirit. All right. He says, don't you want to know how I did that? He's asking you. He's not asking his wife in the movie. He's asking you. Do you want to know how I can accurately prophesy? They're on a loop. It's cyclical. He sees the pattern. He recognizes the pattern. This is sort of off topic, but this past weekend I was teaching my son how to play the read notes and play the keyboard and stuff like that. And he's following along as the notes are going on the staff. And he needed help. So I came over and I told him, I don't know how to read notes, which is true. I don't. I play by memory and I listen to stuff, right? So I go over and he's like, Dad, I need some help. So I look at the notes and I just start playing along. And he's like, oh, how did you do that? You said you didn't know how to read notes. And I said, I don't. But if you can learn to recognize the patterns, everything becomes much easier, right? And I'm like, that happens in music, that happens in life. They're on a loop. Truman, the true man or the truth seekers of this world, if you recognize the loops, if you recognize the patterns that things go in our world, like the sun and its pattern and the moon and its pattern, that's huge, okay? If you want to start learning how to read patterns, start looking at the sun and the moon. They do the same thing every single day with slight deviations. If you start watching and you start paying attention, you'll start learning patterns and then you'll be able to predict things. And then you'll understand how they worked in the past as well. He says, they just go round and round. They just go round and round, right? Just like the sun and the moon as well. She goes, you're upset because you want to go to Fiji. They've run out of excuses. Not let's jump into bed. Not let's have kids. Not let's save up money and stuff like that. She's actually going to say that one in just a minute. But she pulls the rabbit out of the hat and she's like, oh, you want to go to the North Pole? I got you. I've heard you talk about this. You want to go to Fiji? I got you. And she goes, you know what? You should go. I think we should save up for a few months and then you should just go. There you go. Okay. She's still it's a false pretense. She really does not want him to go, right? They don't want you to go. They want to make it appear like they're supporting you and like, yeah, you should totally go one of these days, right? But just like if you watch Westworld, where the character keeps on promising, one of these days we'll do what we always wanted to do. One of these days we will. One of these days means never. No, never. All that matters is right now. All that matters is today. So he goes, let's go now. That's one of the key factors of this movie. No, not one of these days. Let's go now. I need answers. I need to see what's going on. So he takes off in the car. All of these other actors pull in front of him and they create this traffic jam, keeping him from going because they know where he's going, right? One of the things that's stopping him, by the way, remember, he also represents the blue beam. One of the things that's stopping him is this truck that says barbers. It's totally holding up traffic. The barber and the barber god, or the razor god, or the haircutting god, has come up time and time again in our truth and movies, right? That is the electromagnetic barrier that cuts off the plasmic hair of the gods or goddesses or whatnot, right? So that electromagnetic barrier is up, and it is keeping him from escaping off into space or whatever, symbolically on the cosmic scale. So he goes, look, Meryl, he went around in a circle, he tricked him, and then he comes back and he goes, look, same road, no cars. It's magic, right? And he's all freaking out. I love this part. So she says, you know you can't drive over water. Now, we're going to talk about why the ancient gods are afraid of water. We're going to talk about what holy water is. What is the Camp Crystal Lake? What is that clear lake? What is the water? Why is it that Truman, as a beam of energy, can't touch this particular water? But first, we're actually going to take a quick break because we have a lot more to cover. This movie's chock full of esoteric information. So a quick break to use the bathroom, grab a drink, and we'll be right back. Around the world men's thoughts will fly, quick as the twinkling of an eye, and water shall great wonders do. How strange, and yet it shall come true. Beneath the water men shall walk, shall ride, shall sleep, shall even talk, and in the air men shall be seen in white and black and even green. For in those wondrous far-off days the women shall adopt a craze to dress like men in trousers wear, and to cut off their locks of hair. They'll ride astride with brazen brow as witches do. On broomsticks now there'll be a sign for all to see. Be sure that it will certain be. Then love shall die and marriage cease, and nations wane and babes decrease, as wives shall fondle cats and dogs, and men live much the same as hogs. Pictures alive with movements free, boats like fishes beneath the sea. When men like birds shall scour the sky, then half the world deep drenched in blood shall die. Then half the world deep drenched in blood shall die. For those who live this century through, in fear and trembling this shall do. Flee to the mountains and the dens, to bog and forest and wild fens. For storm will rage and oceans roar, when Gabriel stands on sea and shore. And as he blows his wondrous horn, old worlds die and new be born. Fiery dragon will cross the sky 6 times before this earth shall die. Mankind will tremble and frightened be, for the 6 heralds in this prophecy. For 7 days and 7 nights, man will watch this awesome sight. The tides will rise beyond their ken to bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain to shore, and flooding waters rushing in will flood the lands with such a din that mankind cowers in muddy fen and snarls about his fellow men. And when the dragon's tail is gone, man forgets and smiles and carries on to apply himself. Too late, for mankind has earned deserved fate. His masked smile, his false grandeur will serve the gods their anger stir, and they will send the dragon back to light the sky. His tail will crack upon the earth and rend the earth, and man shall flee, King, Lord, and... Okay, welcome back. I can't wait to get into the next segment. We have a lot more esoteric and occult symbolism as we dive into the truth in movies. Right now, it's my birthday, so happy birthday to me. Thank you to everyone else, and happy unbirthday to the rest of you. I hope you're having a good time. I'm having a blast. Now, let's switch gears. Let's continue where we left off. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I totally remembered to unmute the mic. So, Truman, as we've talked about, represents the truth seeker in all of us, okay? He is the quintessential root of us, essentially, symbolically speaking. He represents the blue beam of light that shoots up out of these holy mountains, or what I call the plasma volcanoes, at the North Pole. Now, let's just, even if you don't believe that, it's totally fine, right? This is all just my perspective. It's just my experience, my walk, my research and stuff that I share with you. I'm not saying it's true and you have to believe it. I'm just saying this is interesting, I've found, right? As I put these things together, I share them with you. What you do with them is up to you. I totally respect that. So let's assume that all of that is true, okay? It doesn't have to be, but let's just pretend like it is so that we can ask what are the implications, so we can figure out why he does not like the water, why he can't drive over the water, or why he can't go onto the water or whatever, why he's afraid of the water, right? He represents electrical energy. Now, think of this. My studies have indicated, and I believe yours, you'll find this too if you do some research about that mysterious island that existed at the North Pole. It is said that around that island, but specifically in the middle of the island for sure, the salt water becomes fresh. Ocean water becomes fresh because water is literally generated and coming up out of our earth. So it is the purest, freshest, distilled. Some of you, big drink tea, I know you're going to like that word. It's distilled water. It is water without any impurities whatsoever, right? So let me give you an example why that's important. If you have lightning and it hits the ocean, that lightning is going to spread into the water and go down into the ocean because there are impurities that carry ions inside of the ocean water. And all of that salt, just the salt by itself, acts as an electrolyte, which means it makes paths for electricity to travel through. However, pure water is an insulator. It's one of the best insulators against electricity. It keeps electricity out, right? So if you have electrical energy that is trying to cross a water barrier of some type, it will not be able to if that water is pure. If it's distilled, if there are no impurities in it, I'll read to you from what it says here. It says, since pure water does not contain any impurities, calcium, magnesium, salt, and other types of salt, which behave as charge carriers, there are no ions found, and there is the absence of electrons. Hence, pure water does not conduct electricity, and it is an insulator. This is what's happening. Truman represents an electromagnetic phenomenon. He cannot walk onto the pure waters that surround the island at the North Pole. If you don't believe me, there are many legends that talk about how people, Vikings and other travelers went north, and if you go far enough north, right, and you cross that constant storm and whatnot, the water in some areas is actually crystal clear. It's pure. It's drinkable. It's not muddied up ocean water. So, it's repelled, right? The water insulators basically keep out electricity. They don't allow electricity in. They don't allow it to pass. All right, so that's an interesting little tidbit. So he closes his eyes when he gets to the bridge and he puts his wife's hand on the thing and he's like, you drive, right? This is the leap of faith, basically. This is sort of an exaggerated version of the leap of faith that one makes when trying to go to the North Pole. This is all just in reverse, too. If you were actually trying to get to the North Pole, you would follow the reverse of this movie because he's sort of leaving the North Pole. All right, so they say there's extreme danger. She's like, oh my God, Truman, what about that sign? And he says, they're exaggerating. We'll be fine, right? There are all these signs posted all over the place. Those signs are just signs. They're just words that somebody wrote, right? It's somebody else trying to put a command into your mind. That's what the signs are for. Right? So you read them and they're hoping that they'll trigger that web form spell that's in your mind. And she goes, exaggerating? Do you believe that? So they start, setting things on fire or whatnot. He goes right through the fire and then he gets to the nuclear power plant and he goes, back up. There's a leak. There's a leak at the plant. The whole area is being evacuated. So, like I said, during the time when the rest of the world is distracted and the whole area is being evacuated or whatever is the time to go, which is what Truman's doing right now. All right, so then he's like, oh, you're welcome, Truman. Now, this cop should not know Truman's name, but he calls it out. And then Truman is like, oh my God, he said my name. Truman. This guy knows about the blue beam. This guy knows about the apocalypse. This guy knows about, the story that we're telling, basically. But he gets tackled. All right, this is what happens when you just start telling your friends and your family and everybody, hey, I'm leaving to the North Pole. I'll see you guys later, blah, blah, blah. You're labeled crazy. You're locked up with shock therapy. They tackle you. They'll try to get you if they can, right? But the movie actually gives us clues as to how we should go about doing that. Now, I did take a picture here because I wanted to read this. Let's talk about Jim Carrey. Let's talk about Jim Carrey. I love Jim Carrey. Now, Jim Carrey is just a guy, right? Let's just pretend like this is, okay, Jim Carrey is just a guy, just like me, just like you, right? That's his real name, right? He has a real life and everything. He's only an actor when he's on the movies and stuff like that. Now, look at this. Jim Carrey, this whole movie is about people who look like regular people, but they're really actors, lifelong actors, right? Watch this. This is going to mess with your head a bit. Jim Carrey, many of his characters are ordinary men whose lives are changed by supernatural or otherwise unseen forces, as in The Mask, when he was Ipkiss, The Majestic, Liar Liar, Bruce Almighty, The Truman Show. We're seeing a theme here, right? Now, people could speculate. They could be like, oh, that's just the parts that he likes to play. There's a reason that he likes to play those types of parts, right? So I zoomed in on it a bit there. I really want to drive this point home because there's something that Jim Carrey has said that I'm going to touch on here right now. So if you understand Jim Carrey, you're going to understand that he's been going through some stuff in the media, right? Where he's having this sort of existential personality crisis or whatnot. Let me show you what my theory on that is. So Jim is short for James, which is short for Jacob or Yaakov, which means a supplanter, right? Somebody who takes the place of something else. That's what the blue beam is, okay? It is taking the place of this world or whatever. Somebody who shows up and takes the place of something else. And that's what the blue beam is. It shows up, it takes the place of something else. There are beings that come down into our world that show up and take the place of everyone who dies during the apocalypse, and they inherit the world. So his name means a supplanter, somebody who takes the place of somebody else. Now, let's take a look at this. What is the etymology or the original meaning of Carey, the last name? If we take a close look, it says here, free man. So Jim Carrey's actual birth name means a free man who is a supplanter, somebody who takes the place of somebody else, right? His name means a free man. And then the movie, The Truman Show, is exactly like Free Guy. Remember we broke that one down with Ryan Reynolds, who wears the blue and has all this blue symbolism as well, right? So Jim Carrey's birth name means free man who takes the place of somebody else. Now, let's take a look at this. It says Jim Carrey says that he's not an actor, that he doesn't exist. He's an idea, and talks about depression that he has. So let me throw this out there. What if Jim Carrey and a whole host of other actors, people who grew up and just thought that they happened to be in the right place in the right time and they went to school and stuff, what if they were being influenced from birth to play these roles, to play these specific and certain roles? And their names that were given to them were labels describing their future characters that they would play. So maybe Jim Carrey, as somebody who is thinking these things over, role after role after role of playing an ordinary guy that snaps out of it and sees that the world is a lot different and he starts to change, maybe it's having an effect on him because his actual real life personality is also an act, or it's been given to him. It's been thrust upon him everywhere he goes, exactly like the role that he's playing now. Isn't that something? So he goes back to his wife and she says, let me get you some help, Truman. That's another thing that happens to truth seekers, right? We're just like, hey, check this out. Isn't this interesting? By the way, you see the chicken up there? There's another chicken symbolism. We're going to talk about the chicken in a minute. Actually, very soon. So get ready, Chuck and Chambers. This one's for you. She says, let me get you some help, right? We don't need help. right? Help comes from others of a similar spirit. Help does not come from the opposite, because their version of help is actually hindrance. Their version of help is actually hurt, okay? So be careful. And that's coming from a woman who is portrayed as being somebody in the medical profession, which is going to come up here towards the end. Now, let's see what happens. She says, why don't you let me fix you some of this new mocha cocoa drink? Now, this happens a lot in this movie, right? They're doing these little ads. She gets nervous. She doesn't know what to do. So she does a little ad, right? She just sort of kicks in. She stops, her brain stops working. It cannot follow all of this truth that Truman is trying to share with her, right? She's freaking out. So she diverts back to her programming and literally shows him a commercial, right? It's got nothing to do with anything. That's not true. I'm actually going to explain to you how it has everything to do with everything. But let's see what happens. Why don't you let me fix you some of this new mocha cocoa drink, right? Now, we as the viewers think, oh, that's just a funny little joke that they made because it's like a commercial. Ha, ha, ha. It's meta. I get it. No. It's deeper than that. Let's check out mocha cocoa. Let's look at the word. I'm going to tell you right now. The M in mocha cocoa means from. Okay? In ancient languages, the M meant from, or implied from. It actually means waters, but and when you put it in front of a word as a prefix, it means from. Okay? All right. Actually, I could be off on that. Actually, let's just move forward. I'm sorry. I'm getting nervous. This is all exciting. So let's talk about cocoa. All right. So the word cocoa relates to the chicken symbolism that we saw earlier. I hope that you can stay with me for a few minutes so that I can tie together some important truths. Let's look at the word cocoa. It comes from the word cacao, which is pretty much the exact same word as cocoa, okay? Now, the cacao is the name of the actual plant or whatever that holds the little cocoa beans inside the little slimy stuff or whatever. Cacao comes from the word cacaatl. Cacaoatl. Now, do you see that last part that says atl? A-T-L? Exactly like the South American god Quetzalcoatl. Quetzal means feathered. Atl means serpent. So we can take that and apply it to this. Something cocoa, serpent. Cocoa, serpent. Interesting. So we got to figure out what cocoa means. Why is this important to the people in the movie, and how does it relate to a serpent, which is the origin of the actual real word cocoa, right? So let's check it out. Cocoatl. The k sound, the k or the ch. Today we say ch here in America. It's actually k. It's a guttural. This comes from this glyph right here, which represents a boundary. If you turn this on the side, what this is the three beams. Okay, let me turn that on the side for you real quick. That's the three beams, okay, from the earth to the sky. They're the earth pillars, I guess you could say. They're affectionately seen as like a ladder, a fence, a boundary. They are known. This glyph right here is responsible for the ch sound in chicken, okay, which is twice. It repeats it. That's why you see the chicken symbolism and a whole host of others like cocoa. Same thing. Kaka, cocoa, kaka. It's all back here. It's a guttural K, or, it's a hard C sound basically, right? And this is where this comes from. Cocoa is this glyph. I just froze. I just want to make sure I'm good. Am I good? Okay, sweet. We're getting deep. Cocoa is this symbol twice in a row, which is two boundary markers right next to each other. So those people who are from between the boundary markers or from the Garden of Eden, right, are said to be the cocoa, or those who are from the boundaries, those who are from or beyond the pillars of Hercules, the boundary markers of the westernmost extremities, which is the central part that goes down into the world of our world. So that's a lot. If you need to rewind it, I understand. So cocoa, the mococo drink, basically is saying that they are the boundary markers. And let's take a look at this. This letter is called het. It's kaka. It's kaka. It means dark, essentially, or it implies dark. This area is where the dark mountain is. So by extension, over time, anything that is kaka has usually had an association with being dark, like cocoa. Anyone who is from the Kaka Islands is said to be crazy or act really different. You know what I mean? They're from they're islanders. They're from a different culture or whatnot. So they're seen as being cuckoo. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. That's where all of this stuff comes into play. The chicken, the bird, all this stuff. So let's look at the glyph for the het, right? For that kaka sound, that double ka. It is literally the number 8, okay? It represents the number 8. It is the 8th number of the Phoenician alphabet, and it is the 3 beams. It depends on which way you turn it because they turned it around over time, right? It's like the Roman numeral 3, sort of. You could call it Chet. Some characters are named after this letter, named Chet, and you will notice that those characters are usually some sort of boundary, or they keep people from from going where they want to go or whatever, right? It's number 8. This is also seen in the 21 Pilots video, Nico and the Niners. They make this out of light, right? And it means a fence, an inner chamber, like the hollow recesses of our earth, a gate, because this is the gate of our world. This is the marker, the Janus marker, the 101 symbolism. Suso, thank you. I appreciate you, man. These are the great separators between our world and another world. These are there to protect. These are markers. They're boundary stones, basically. They're giant mountains that shoot out light from time to time. But anyways, so that's where this comes from. So cocoa, caca, cuckoo, for example, right? Of Mount Nicaragua. No artificial sweeteners. Why does it have to come from Mount Nicaragua? I don't even think there is a Mount Nicaragua. I'm pretty sure that's made up. There are mountains in Nicaragua, right? But why do they want to say the word Nicaragua? And why Mount Nicaragua? Why do these cocoa beans, these special beans, have to come from Mount Nicaragua? It's because agua means water and nicar means dark, essentially, right? Dark waters. Well, check this out. If you have pure distilled water the size of a huge lake or ocean, right? What happens is the light continues to pass through it. It doesn't, I mean, some light reflects off, but the light continues because there's nothing blocking it. Remember, there's no ions or anything in that water. So the light just keeps on going through the water until it eventually dissipates. The water looks dark if you have a whole bunch of it compared to dirty water, which reflects more of that light and shoots it right back out at us. So we can't see very deep or anything. So these are often called, the waters up there near the North Pole are known as the dark waters. Right? And we kind of talked about that with Needles breaking his name down in Back to the Future. All right. So we go back to him. He's like, who are you talking to? She's talking to us, right? In the movie, it's pointless. In the movie, it's just an advertisement. But in our world, it's actually very important. These minuscule little details that we're picking up on. She's talking to us. He goes, what the hell does this have to do with anything? This has to do with everything. That's why it's in the movie. It's actually crucial. It's actually important. We are tricked into thinking that it's insignificant, but it's super symbolic. Then he goes, you're a part of this, aren't you? You know some stuff that's going on. Now, he's actually talking to us right now too. He goes, she's like, you're scaring me. And she holds out these 3 things. So there's these 3 objects pointing at Truman, right? Who represents sort of like the amalgamation of the 3 beams together. I'll show you that here in a bit too. He goes, what are you going to do? Dice me? Now, this is also symbolic because that cosmic, plasmic discharge entity that is seen in our sky from time to time, occasionally is seen as being chopped up into pieces. Right? Many times there's many different gods that have stories about them being chopped up and their different parts are scattered or hidden or whatnot. Right? So that's also happening to Truman and they're referencing that. So his buddy comes over, Marlon comes over to distract him, bring some beer as usual. He's like, just drink your cares away, Truman, stop thinking about all that crazy stuff. And he says, it feels like the whole world revolves around me somehow. Now, we could internalize that and maybe, like, I feel like the whole world revolves around me, right? Which is actually a lot of people who have watched The Truman Show. Many people suffered this delusion, or at least what is seen as a delusion, that they are The Truman Show, that all of their life is being recorded. And I'm not saying there's not truth to that. I'm just saying the reality is that's how powerful of a message this movie carries with it, right? He says, I feel like the world revolves around me somehow. It does. He is the axis mundi. He is the pole of the world, and everything revolves around him. That's why he says that. Welcome, welcome. All right, so he says, I feel like the world revolves around me. He says, remember when I stayed up all night in your tent? Now, if you don't believe me before, watch what he says. Watch what he says right now. Remember when I stayed up all night in your tent? Because you wanted to play North Pole? So they live, their high school is called North. He basically represents the blue beam at the middle of the world. He lives in the Garden of Eden. He's looking for the Garden of Eden, his girlfriend Sylvia or whatever, and the twisting vine of Fiji. And he wanted to play North Pole as a child, right? Now, we go into the moon. In the moon is a secret room, which I'll show you here in a minute. And Christoph, who is the producer of this show, is actually whispering things into this guy's ear. Now, imagine that this is our world, and this guy doesn't believe that he's an actor, just like he's portraying in the movie. However, he is an actor. He's in on it. He's a part of everything, right? But there are those actors in the world that don't know that they're actors. So he is listening to some sort of signal, which is coming from the sky or the heavenlies, which is influencing the things that he's saying to Truman. What am I saying? I'm saying that this guy that they're about to show you, who's feeding the lines to the actor, does not represent a guy. It represents energy. It represents frequency. And that frequency is influencing the actions of what happens down in our world. This is called astrology. So he says, he tells him what the line is, which is, I'd gladly walk in front of traffic for you. And then the guy repeats it. And he goes, the point is, I would gladly step in front of traffic for you. And he says step in front of it because he's like improvising or whatever, right? But he's being fed these lines, right? Beknownst to him or unbeknownst to him. He's being fed these lines by the heavenly luminaries. And he's trying to influence Truman to not escape this world. And he says, the last thing I would ever do is lie to you, Truman. He might genuinely believe that, but he doesn't realize that that is actually a lie, right? He's feeding him lies whether he knows it or not, because we know the truth. We know he lives in a dome in a studio set in Hollywood, right? But this guy, whether or not he knows that, he is lying to Truman. Just like there are people in this world, whether they know it or not, that are lying. They could wholeheartedly believe the lie, and I feel bad for them. You know, I have pity on them. That doesn't mean that I take it personally. They full on are tricked. They full on are convinced by what's being given to them. He says, the last thing that I would do is lie to you. If everybody's in on it, I'd have to be in on it too, right? So this is a warning that the movie gives to us. Be careful about who you share these esoteric secrets with, because the people that you might confide in might actually be the people that tell on you and turn you into the authorities, and then you're getting shock therapy or whatever. He says, I'm not in on it, Truman. Now listen to this. I'm not in on it because there is no it. That is what the rest of the world has been programmed to think. It represents the apocalypse. It represents the hole in the sky that opens up with plasma tentacles coming out, and nobody knows how to describe it except for calling it that, which is it. It gets confusing because of the wording that's chosen. But it, we've talked about a lot. That is the word that scares the knights who say ni. They're terrified of it. They don't want to talk about it because it wipes everything away. It is very powerful, right? Pennywise, all of that. All of those it references, A Wrinkle in Time, you know what I mean? There's a million different references to it as some sort of cosmic entity, sleeping god, world devourer, etc. All right, so we go back into the moon where the producer walks through these people, and they have a t-shirt on that says, love him, protect him. So it turns into a religion, basically, right? Outside in the real world, right? They have these sort of almost Christian flared t-shirts that sort of look like they're talking about Jesus or something. That's what happens. This myth and this legend of the light of the world turns into worldwide religions and belief systems because of the stories that are told over and over and over. So he's back on TV. Cocoa beans grown on the upper slopes of Mount Nicaragua. Once again, a reference to the North Pole, right? To the dark mountain on the dark waters, basically. Now, his love of his life is watching him on TV. She is on the outside looking in. She's rooting for him just like many are rooting for us, I believe. This is what I like to believe. There are those outside of this world who are our space brothers and sisters, which is what the Native Americans call them, our heavenly brothers and sisters, whatever you want to call them. And they are looking in whatever kind of way, right? I'm not going to get super specific about it, but I feel that there are those who root for us to escape, to leave, to get out of here, to figure it out, to break free from the loops of life and to be unique and to blaze a trail of our own, right? That's what she represents. So the guy on the TV show is showing Truman up here, right? And then they're sort of doing this little special segment. So they zoom out into like space. And it says 7 days a week to an audience around the globe. Now, this is really meta and very interesting because they're showing us like, look, it's all fake. Look, Truman actually lives in a dome, like, and his world is all fake, etc. But then they zoom out of that and they speak to our hearts here in our fake little world. And they say, broadcasting around the globe. Well, really? Are you sure? Like, are you really sure? And this thing right here makes like 3 lines, like the 3 beams, right? But you see how they do that double trickery there? They show you that the reality of your world is in a dome. And then they zoom out of that and they show you, oh, look, it's actually a dome that's on a globe and you all live inside of the globe, etc. So they do a double trickery right here. Enclosed in the largest studio ever constructed. So we've got a dome within a dome, and there's probably another dome or something, right? There's 2 domes. And then they zoom out and they show you this dude who has a little window up there in the sky and he goes through or whatever. And they say enclosed in the largest studio ever constructed. And then they zoom out a little bit. And he says, along with the Great Wall of China, one of only 2 man-made structures visible from space. Let me tell you something. Okay, that's a fallacy. That is not true. Just like George Washington had wooden teeth, okay? Which blows my mind that they actually teach that garbage in school. And it kind of doesn't surprise me too. But you cannot see anything from damn space, okay? You can't see freaking Earth from space. You can't see the land because space is what's on the other side of the dome, okay? You cannot see anything from outside of the dome except for the dome. Which is why we always see the same side of the moon, which is another story. But they say you can see the Great Wall of China from space. Even if the concept as it's portrayed of space from academics was true, you would not be able to see the Great Wall of China. It's about the size of a road. Okay, that's how wide it is. Okay, I don't care how long it is or whatever. Like, you're not going to see a really long road from space. You're not going to see the Great Wall of China from frickin' the moon or, you know, whatever they're trying to say. No, it's not going to happen. Now, is there space within our atmosphere when you go really high up before you hit the dome? Yes, there is space up there. And yes, you can probably look down and see the whole world, etc. But they put that right on the Hollywood sign, which is really interesting too, right? Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. The Red Hot Chili Peppers. All right, so they zoom out. Now, this is like zooming out on our world. Truman's world is our world. This is like zooming out on our world. This almost kind of reminded me of what it looks like under an electron microscope. That's why I took this picture, because I wanted you to see that sometimes I talk about us being the Who's of Whoville and how we're actually very small and we live in a fractalverse. Or the opposite of that, we're very big compared to smaller things, right? It very well may be that we're much, much smaller than we ever could have imagined, comparatively speaking to the rest of the cosmos, we'll say, right? So then they go into the Truman Show and they show you like the ball Earth and stuff. And then this guy makes his appearance and he says, I was on pins and needles the entire time. They specifically wrote that into the script, talking about being on pins and needles. They have him with a red sky background, basically, and the red sky is held up by pins and needles, or blue beams, rods, whatever, beams of light, sky beams that shoot out of various cavernous systems in the earth and make it look like the sky is being held up by pins and needles, right? That's why they have a reference to that. So they say, come with us now as we go live to the lunar room. So now we find out that the moon is not what it appears to be in the Truman Show, which is our world. On the 221st floor of the Omnicam Ecosphere. Wait a minute. Why'd they choose 221st floor? 221. 221, just in the same way that letters, right, represent numbers. If you go back in time, they represent numbers. Numbers can also, in turn, reverse, represent letters. 221 is Titan, believe it or not, right? Which are the huge giant gods that touched the sky and reached up and held up the sky and the heavens and stuff, right? 221, the Teton, the Teuton, the Titan, the Titans, the Tet, those of the Tet, right? Or the X, the central marker, etc., right? Which is sometimes seen in the moon too. All right. So it says on the 221st floor, etc. And then we zoom in and you can see him zooming into the moon, and there is a man on the moon, or a man inside of the moon, because the moon in the Truman Show is hollow. It is a little world inside of a world, right? And we go to the world's greatest televisionary. So basically they almost call the moon the world's greatest television or projection. Light in the sky that creates an image. It's the world's largest TV set. On the same channel every day, all day, every day. Because it's not physical. It's not a physical thing. It represents something physical, but it is an image of that physical thing, which I'll get into another time. So there's this little hole in the moon, and he says, the designer and the architect of the world within a world. A dome within a dome. The moon within the earth. Interesting. That is Sea Haven Island. Christoph. Now, Christoph means of Christ, or of the covering which illuminates, basically. The anointing. Now, speaking of putting men on the moon and the man on the moon, etc., right? There's a song by REM, and it's called Man on the Moon. The chorus goes, if you believe... I suck at singing, I'm sorry. If you believe they put a man on the moon, man on the moon. If you believe there's nothing up his sleeve, then nothing is cool. Now, if you just listen to that song, it's easy to just sing along and not really break down what it's actually saying to us. But I'm going to tell you what it's saying, okay? And there's a whole backstory, and actually Jim Carrey is related to this song through another movie. But they are saying in this song by REM, which is one of my favorite bands, if you believe that they put a man on the moon, like it's physical and you can just go land on it, right? It's the same as if you believe that there's nothing up his sleeve. And they're talking about this guy who always has something up his sleeve. What this song is saying is they're saying if you believe that, then nothing's good. It's not good for you. If you believe that we landed on the moon, then that's the same as you believing that there's no trick. Right? That there's nothing being hidden, that there's no man behind the curtain. REM is telling you, just like Imagine Dragons, just like freaking billions of bands have told you this, that the moon is something different than what is being shown to us. And if you believe that they landed on the moon, then you might as well believe everything that the magicians at the show do, right? That there's no trick involved, that it's not just smoke and mirrors, basically. Anyways, so as you can see, there have been other attempts for people to invade the Truman Show to tell him, hey man, there's these walk-ins. They come in and they're like, dude, I don't have a lot of time. Listen, your world is fake. Here's what's really going on. Now, this particular walk-in was hiding in a birthday present and makes his appearance on Christmas, which is one of the times when the plasma apocalypse happens. And he stands up and he puts his arms out doing the blue beam, squatter man, Jesus kind of symbolism, right? Trying to tell him the truth. Hey, it's all fake. Your world is totally fake. It's different. And it's TV. You're on TV. Another time when he was a kid, they're telling him, don't go near that mountain of rocks. Don't go over there. That's off limits. He says, why? What's over there? He's been curious since he was a child. He wants to be an explorer. The teacher says, oh, you're too late. There's nothing left to explore. She shows him all of this map, right? This is not a real map of the earth. Okay. Many schools use this, but it's full of fallacies and contradictions, okay? The map is messed up. This map that they use to teach children is all messed up and full of lies all over the place. For example, there is no North Pole. There's not even an Antarctica on that map. So clearly there are areas left to explore. She, representing something real in our world, is telling you everything's been discovered. There is no undiscovered land in our world. There's nothing left to explore, so you might as well not explore. That's a lie. That's not the truth. There are hidden lands. There's all kinds of stuff that is still left for us to explore. It's just that they want to claim it all. They don't want other people going to go claim it. She says, there's nothing left to explore. Truman's been terrified of the water ever since. We've talked about that. I was wondering how many cameras. Okay, so now this guy's taking a call, right? He's taking a call, and the caller says, I was wondering how many cameras that you've got in that town. Now check this out. He says somewhere in the vicinity of 5,000 cameras in Sea Haven. And he goes, that's a lot of cameras. Well, that's a setup for telling you about the first camera. He says, remember, we started with just one. This is very interesting. Watch what they do here. We started with just one camera, and then they show you the camera that they used to film the little fetus, Truman or whatever, inside of the womb. Or they're showing you the first camera. Truman is the first camera, which is a recording device, which is recording information everywhere he goes with all of his wonderful and different and amazing experiences. He is the first camera, which is something that records experience, right? And if he's the first camera, what that means by extension is all the people that you see act as cameras that collect and photograph and store information to be harvested one day. Deep. Premature by 2 weeks. So Truman, the light of the world, was born premature by 2 weeks. That's interesting. Did you know that our calendar is post-mature by about 2 weeks? Our timeline has been changed and 13 days have been taken away from us. So in reality, whenever you get to like the winter solstice or the summer solstice, it used to be 13 days before that. So July, 13 days before the 4th of July, for example, is these, what is it? The solstice, the summer solstice, right? June 21st. 13 days before the new year or whatever. It's all very close in proximity. They have changed the times on our calendars by about 2 weeks. And I find that that's interesting that Truman's time has been changed by about 2 weeks. In competition with 5 other unwanted pregnancies, which I believe is a reference to the 5 other worlds or the 5 other beams of light that have come and gone in different stages of this world that we live in. Truman was the one who arrived on cue. So Truman represents this world, this earth, this experience. Truman was the one who arrived on cue. And then he looks up and he sees all these, he sees a camera in the middle, which is an eye in the sky watching him, right? But it's also surrounded by all these little flying automobiles and trains and cars and stuff, which is symbolic of those things being sucked up into the world tempest and flying around in a circle in the sky. So he says, why do you think Truman has never come close to discovering the true nature of his world until now? So this is happening now. There are people, people who are awakening and realizing that there's more to the world and more to the things that we've just been indoctrinated and taught to believe. They call us woke or awakened, or there is an awakening happening. I don't know how to describe it. You know what I'm talking about, right? But this is happening now in our world. We are starting to discover or to uncover or to see the truth of the true nature of the world that we live in, right? And he says, why do you think that that's happening? And he says, why do you think he never discovered that before? And this guy says, we accept the reality of the world with which we are presented. So however people tell you to see it is the easiest thing to believe in, right? If we look up at the moon, we will see the things that we were taught that the moon is, which is a big rock that's just floating above us, that's a quarter the size of our world, just out of reach, and it could crush us at any time or whatever. Like, that's what we see when we look up and see the moon. We believe that because that's what was presented to us, right? We don't have any other alternatives because we have not begun to alternatively provide those to ourselves. Other people have happily said, oh, you don't want to provide yourself alternatives? You don't want to figure things out for yourself? Sweet, I'll just tell you what it is, right? And here again, we have Truman in between the two pillars as a child and as a grown man. He's in the middle of the two pillars. That's his spot. That's his place in the world as being the Janus god, or the god of the 101, the two-faced god, etc., the blue beam that shoots out. And then he says the world, the place that you live in, he's talking to a caller, but he's actually looking right at you. The world, the place where you live in, is the sick place. Sea Haven is the way that the world should be, right? Now, this is a battle between the dystopia and the utopia. To me, personally, I don't like either of them, okay? I would want to leave Sea Haven just as much as I would want to leave this world the way that it is now in a increasingly dystopian type of atmosphere, right? I don't like either of those extremes. Oh, thank Tiffany. Oh my God. Holy cow. Tiffany says I blow her mind and happy birthday. Well, thank you. I super appreciate it. All right. So check this out. Thank you again, Tiffany. I super appreciate it. Sea Haven is the way that the world should be. Our world is messed up and it will return one day to being a type of paradise, right? But it goes from extreme to extreme, right? You don't want to be in the utopia if you don't want to be in the dystopia. I promise you. Like, you want to be in the middle, which is the golden age. He says, if his was more than just a vague ambition, right? So here's the question about us. Why don't we leave? Why don't we pack up? Why don't we get ready to go? Well, first of all, we don't know that there is anywhere to go. In our mind, we believe what is presented to us, which is, oh, you know, like you can't really get out of this world and you're trapped and there's all these boundaries. But he says, if you had more than just a vague ambition, if you were absolutely determined to discover the truth, there's no way that we could prevent you. Talking right to our hearts. Truman prefers his cell, as you call it. And ultimately, what he's speaking to is us. He's saying, these are your choices, right? We might have all of these influence going on, but ultimately, you're an independent soul. You're a being with free will to rebel against our system and our society and our laws and our rules and our expectations and our boundaries that we've set up. So she says, that's where you're wrong. You're so wrong and he'll prove you wrong. That's us. And those are the people on our side. Those are the people cheering us on. Thanks for the birthday wishes in the chat too. Appreciate you guys. So we go back to the twins. They show up and Truman's starting to catch on. He's like, oh, look who's here. The twins. Oh, interesting. And then they show you this sign that says Carlton Fine Colonial Homes, right? Colonial is reference to columns or column homes, a house that has columns that come up out of it to support the roof, just like our world. But what does Carlton mean? Well, it's related directly to the word churl or churl. We would say Carol, etc., which means free man, a low degree of free man, somebody who is free, basically, exactly like Jim Carrey's name. Carrey is directly related to Carl. Carltown or Carlton is what that means. It means the town of the free man, which is Oceanside or whatever the name is, Beach City, Shell Beach, I forgot what it was, wherever he lives in the movie. Carrey, remember Jim Carrey means free man. It's the exact same thing. They put that in front of Jim Carrey. No wonder Jim Carrey's mind is blown by his own roles, right? No wonder he's having this existential crisis. It's understandable. I get it. So anyways, he goes back to work and he says, this is about the great variable. When will death occur? Now, his death occurs when he retracts and goes back down as the blue beam into the Hades, into the hollow recesses of this world, back down to where the smoky god lives, right? This ball of plasma inside of the earth. That's when his death occurs. So he says it could be a week, could be a month. Now, when that happens, up here in our world, we go through a cataclysm. Okay, so what he's really talking about is the apocalypse. He says it could be today. All these people that jump onto my channel and they're like, first question, right? Always the first question. When's this going to happen? Huh? When is it going to, tell me when it's going to happen? Tell me when it's going to happen. Dude, listen to what Truman is telling you. It could be a week, could be a month, could be a year. It could be today. So you better invest in your future. Like, get ready. And if you don't believe that that's what he's talking about, look what happens. They show him behind a hole, just like in the Shawshank Redemption, which is the same symbolism. And then he starts spinning around. He says it could be today. They'll show you a hole and everything is spinning around, which represents the depressurization hole or exit point in the sky. You go stabbed in the heart by the tip of a runaway beach umbrella. He's trying to sell insurance, right? But being stabbed by the tip of a beach umbrella, let's take a little zoom in here and check this out. Look at the lamp. Remember the lamp that was in the travel agency? Same style, same exact type of lamp with that beam shooting up underneath a dome. That is the beach umbrella stabbing somebody in the heart or whatever, which is usually the plasma that's coming down, as we've talked about. So his boss basically is like, hey, Truman, this is Vivian. Vivian, this is Truman. So this is his new love interest. Over here off to the side, you can see there's the all-seeing eye symbolism with the double circle and the light. She's wearing red, so she's supposed to remind him of the plasma apocalypse, but ultimately it's like some sort of fake version to get him to stay, right? They introduce a new love interest, so he doesn't want to be an explorer anymore, and he wants to pursue his new fling or whatever, right? His new crush. And her name is Viv or Vivian, which is also 66, which is also interesting too. So VI is Roman numeral 6. Now he starts mowing the lawn with his new elk rotary, which is interesting. It's red, and rotary indicates to twist or to spin, right? And then there's the elk, which is the name of one of those like Freemasonic groups, the Elk Society, I think they're called, the Elk Lodge, right? And then they show you Sea Haven, which has a glass dome all the way around it. And then a little dome of water. I'm starting to lose my voice. I'm so sorry. I'll try to speak up. Anyways, so this guy is looking at the classifieds inside of the moon, basically indicating he doesn't like his job. There are those people who are opposite us that are kind of, not full on the red plasma, not full on bad guys, but they're, they don't really like what they do. So they might switch sides, basically is what I'm saying. He's also reading the classifieds, which means he's reading or learning classified information that's not privy to others. So they look at Truman. He looks to be asleep and passed out right next to that spirally, circly deal and the umbrella or whatever that is. And he says, what's he doing in the basement? Truman went down into the basement, and this freaks out Christoph. Right? This freaks out the people of Sea Haven. They don't want Truman to disappear. He represents the eternal flame, the eternal light. They don't want it to go down into the basement, right? So they send over his best friend with a 6-pack of beer every single time to try to get his mind off of escaping. Really, this guy's checking up on him. He's looking to see if he's there. Then he opens up a closet, and there is a hole, and Truman escaped up out of the basement. So Truman came up out of the underworld, symbolically speaking. So he goes up into the hole. You can see it's exactly, I didn't take a picture of it, but it's exactly where his garden once was. Now check this out. We get into some more interesting prophecy that is shown to us through the truth of the movies, or the truth in movies, right? Here is the moon. This is in Truman's world. This is close to an apocalyptic event, which is them losing their blue beam, or the blue beam retracting and going through another apocalyptic event. In the Eye of the Storm. I'm honored. Hey, what a cool name, man. I like the omen going on there. $5. Thank you. And it says happy birthday. I'm having a great time with everyone. Thank you. And it's an honor for me to share this information with you, whether or not you think it's true or has merit or not. Obviously, some people see the value, and I really appreciate it. And I'm honored to be here and to be a part of it and to play my part, really. However I affect your lives, I hope it's for the better. All right, so we're going back to Truman's world, which is really our world, and we take a look at the moon right before the apocalypse happens, symbolically speaking, in Truman's world. When they lose Truman, they lose everything. That's their version of the apocalypse. So this is the regular moon, and boom, all of a sudden, the moon becomes pretty much as bright as the sun. It's amplified, and it's like a spotlight shining down. It has increased in its intensity, and it's shining around. Look at that. It's brilliantly white. You can't see the craters. You can't see anything on that. That's super bright moon. Now, I'm going to tell you that is going to happen and is currently happening, according to my perspective, when I look at the moon in our world today, right? I don't know if I took a picture of it, but there is a prophecy in the Bible that says, sometime during the end of days, the moon will become as 7 times brighter, and the sun will also become 7 times brighter. They get brighter and brighter and brighter, and there's a good reason for that. It has to do with the alternative geography or the alternative cosmology of our world in ancient cosmology, and what is responsible for creating those lights in our sky, in the heavens. The moon, the sun, the stars have the same source, okay? That's why they're all pretty much white, okay? Because heaven is white. Like the space out there beyond the blackness of our covering of our sky is beautiful. It's brilliant. It's white. It's shiny. It's opalescent, pearlescent, shiny, beautiful colors. Anyways, we are blocked off from that, but we get a little preview of it from the sun and the moon and the stars and stuff. So that is going to happen in our world. If you look out at night right now, you will see a blindingly bright moon quite often. It's even the other day, the moon was only halfway full, and I remarked to my own son, "Wow, look at the moon." And you know what he says? "Oh my God, it's crazy bright." I'm like, yeah, and it's only halfway out, right? Imagine whenever it's fully out there. Right now, the moon is casting shadows. When I was younger, those shadows were very blurry, and you know what I mean? Like there's sort of a shadow. Today, they're crisp silhouettes. The moon is getting brighter, and it will continue to get brighter, and the sun will continue to get brighter, which means it will get hotter, which means the days will get hotter until they start to burn things, and people have to actually hide from the sun. Now, we're going to see that here in just a minute. Hey, Suso, thank you, man. Hey, thanks for the birthday wish, too. I appreciate it. All right, let's check this out. Let's see. I'm going somewhere with this, right? We saw the moon. We're going to see the sun here in a bit. So they sick Pluto on him, right? The god of the underworld. And they see if they can try to find Truman. Now, the guy who's in the moon, Christoph, says, "What time is it?" He's asking because it's too dark for them to find Truman. He wants to turn on the sun. His assistant says, "It's way too early for that. The sun is not supposed to come out. It's probably, I don't know, I'm guessing like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning or something, maybe 4. I don't know. It's the middle of the night in Truman's world. And he wants to bring the sun out. This is also a very real prophecy from ancient times, handed down and passed down to us, when the days would be shortened and the sun would come out during the time that used to be considered night. He says, cue the sun. Bring it out of its time. This is how we know. This is one of the omens. People ask me all the time, what are the omens? What are the signs? What should I look for? You should watch the sun and the moon first and foremost, okay? They will get brighter. They will increase in their speed. They'll start circling around, not us, them, okay? They'll start going around faster and faster. That's because of what's happening outside of our world with that plasma that is spinning around our world. That plasma it pulsates. And as it pulsates, it spins, right? That causes the lights that we see to create seasons. When it's pulsating, they pulsate, right? When it goes in, they go in. When it goes out, they go out. As that plasma spins, right, they spin. And as the plasma spins faster and faster, and it starts to pulsate inward, whatever that's called, retract, I don't know, right? It causes the sun and the moon to start to become very focused, which means they get brighter, which means they have more of a, their light is more intense, which causes things to burn if it's daytime. Anyways, so the sun comes out of season, out of its place. That is one of the omens, is whenever the sun starts doing things out of season, out of character, right? For example, the colors that it's totally changing, right? It used to be freaking orange. Then it used to be yellow. Now it's white. You will see it turn blue. Anyway, so the people look up at the sun and they're like, oh my God, like, you know what I mean? It's too bright, basically. They're not used to it. But this is all happening at an accelerated rate in the movie for our sakes so that we can notice it. They have to make it happen very quickly because it's actually happening in your world right now. It's just that it's happening incrementally each day. And it is happening faster and faster every day. So some of us are starting to notice it, right? Man, I forgot the word I was going to use. Anyway, so the people are not used to it. The sun comes out super bright. They have to block their eyes and everything. And exactly like earlier when they held their ears, this is symbolic of what happens to us in the very near future. The sun is going to become too bright for you to handle, right? And they say, what time is it, right? Well, what happens is there is the shortening of the days. When the sun starts to increase and speed up and circle around faster and faster, it will also start to become tighter and tighter and make loops as it starts to make its way to the North Pole, transcending the tropic where it normally stops and normally comes back as the plasma outside pulsates, right? I know that's a lot. Bear with me, okay? So one of the prophecies is that our daytime light that we call day would shorten. They say, what time is it? Everyone checks their clock. They see something's not matching. It's the wrong time. This is hard for us to do in our world of technology today because they control the time and they update the time and they change it constantly, right? This is one reason why many of you feel so tired is because you're not getting a full day's rest. You're not doing anything for a full day. Your days are being shortened and shortened and shortened. And the times are being changed and manipulated. If you don't believe me, let's look at academia. Let's see what academia has to say. It says here, let me make this very evident. I want everyone to read along. Apparently, Earth has actually been speeding up for a few years now. In 2020, it set new records, no less than 28 times, according to Time and Date, whatever the fudge that is, despite the last record being set all the way back in 2005. This trend looks to continue in 2022, but scientists are yet to agree on why the Earth's spin is speeding up. Now, let's look at this from an ancient cosmological viewpoint. The Earth is not speeding up. It's not moving whatsoever, except for earthquakes and stuff, right? Those heavenly luminaries are speeding up. Okay, the stars are speeding up, the moon is speeding up, the sun is speeding up. They're all going faster and faster and faster, which is causing our days to get shorter and shorter and shorter. So many people are out there like, man, I felt like last week went by fast. I felt like last year went by fast. It's not just because, time flies when you're having fun or you're getting older and so time feels like it's going further. No. Time is speeding up. Your days are being shortened. This is in the Bible. It says, in those days, pray that your flight may not take place in winter. Truman's birthday. For in those days shall be tribulations such as hath not been seen from the beginning of the creation that God created until now. This is my Bible voice. I got all low. And may not be. If the Lord did not shorten those days, no flesh would have been saved. But because of the chosen, that would be people like us, whom he did choose to himself, he shortened the days. What does this mean? Okay, I'm going to say this in my own paraphrase kind of way. This means that it's a sign for you. You want to know when the world's going to end? You want to know when you should start getting ready? This is one of the major signs straight from the man Jesus himself. He says, make sure you pay attention to the sun and how quickly it goes across the sky because your days will be shortened. It goes on to say, for at that time there will be a great tribulation, unmatched from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be seen again. This is the apocalypse. Mary Cronin. Oh my God. Thanks, Mary. Man, I've got gas. I'm so happy. Thank you. All right, let me finish this real quick. For at that time there will be a great tribulation, unmatched from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be seen again. If those days had not been cut short, nobody would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Earlier on in the Bible, in one of the books of the prophets named Amos, it says, and it will come that on that day I will make the sun go down at noon and make the earth dark in broad daylight. So these are the signs. These are the omens. The sun and the moon are going to go quicker and quicker until pretty soon the sun is coming up at what we now consider to be nighttime. It will continue to rise earlier and earlier and earlier. Academics is already prepping you. They are already trying to put those reasons into your mind. Even though if you look at it logically, something that is out there spinning, entropy should slow that down. It should not just be getting faster and faster and faster unless there's some sort of a force acting upon it, right? They try to manipulate it. They try to say, oh, the continents are shifting towards the poles. And so an ice skater tucks its arms in and now it's going fast. No. I'm not into that. If you would like to be into that, I respect that. However, I see what is obvious. The sun flies across the sky. It flies across too quickly. There's not a lot of daytime, and the days are being shortened and shortened, which means the years are being shortened, which means they constantly need to adjust the clocks so that you don't realize it. Why? They don't want you to prepare. They don't want you to start fixing the world. They want to usher in a new age, which is the apocalypse. So he says, we're not watching the sea. Truman is escaping by way of the sea. Might be a clue to some of you. So they zoom in, they show Truman out there on the ocean. Now take a look at this off to the side. They show you this little life preserver deal, right? It's a circle. It's got the X on it. I know it's just a life preserver, but symbolically it also represents the land at the North Pole. And then they have the pole that has this snake figurine type thing creeping up it. That's going to come into play here in a bit. We'll show you. Now, they go to the bar and he says, I got 2-1. He doesn't make it. 2-1. I've got 2-1. He doesn't. Weren't they on the 2-1 floor? Now he's saying 2-1. He doesn't make it. Right? More of that 2-1 symbolism, or Titan or Teuton or Teton, all these different ways. The Toodles, the Tutors, etc. It's all very much related. 2-1. He doesn't make it. So 2-11, or the two pillars of Hercules, to 1, the one in the middle. So we go to Truman and it says cabin cam. Now check this out. This is interesting. In our minds, as we're watching the movie, he's out there on the ocean. We're trying to remember that he's also on a giant set as well. But look, the ocean that's right behind him, that's a set. That's the wall. That's not a sky right there. That's a wall. So they're trying to make it look like he came from that direction. So even now they're playing tricks on your mind to make you think that he's out there on the ocean, even though you realize he's not. In the Bible, it says that the heart is deceitful above all things. That word heart is lev, and it actually means mind, your brain. Your brain is easily tricked, not your heart. Your heart is true. Your brain is not, okay? Now, he says that's our hero shot. He's talking about this shot right here of Truman. Truman is the hero. He is the quintessential, original, and root hero of all of the heroes, all of the gods, all of the stories, right? Many. There's always exceptions. He says, that's our hero shot. Now, check this out. Let's do some word studies in the word hero. What does hero mean? Well, this right here is a picture of a hero, which is he and Rho, right? These are two ancient letters. He is usually pronounced chi, and it's the X in Greece, right? In ancient Greece. The X is called chi in Greek. The Rho was shaped like the letter P right there. And this was a sign that they say Emperor Constantine saw in the sky. There's this whole story about how in ancient times, Emperor Constantine was at war. He saw this sign in the sky open up or whatever. And this is what he saw. He saw this symbol of the X and the P together. It's called the He-Rho. The hero. This is the sign of healing. This is the sign of change. This is a sign of support, etc. Now, if you look off to the left and the right, you have what looks like an A and a W, which is actually alpha and omega, right? The lowercase omega, instead of looking like a horseshoe, it kind of looks like a lowercase w, right? Which is very interesting. This represents, this hero represents a linear view of the anode and the cathode shooting up their electrical beams and crossing at the midpoint where that blue beam shoots up, okay? This is the sign. This is the symbol as from a certain perspective, a linear perspective from, however far away. This is the alpha and the omega. It is the beginning point and the end point. It is the sign that you see when the world is created and destroyed. So here, this is just a work of art, and it's represented by nails, or pegs, or pag. Those from the nail area are the pagon, or the pagans, right? The people from the hills, specifically the plasma volcanoes. Anyways, so there's these three nails, there's these three beams that create an electrical arc. They reach up and they touch the hole in the sky. They reach up and they touch the crown of thorns. They reach up and they touch the circle in the sky. And this is how it's typically portrayed. Sometimes it's shown as like a sword and stuff or whatnot. Anyways, this is another example of it where you have the alpha and the traditional uppercase omega, same thing. Now, this reminds me of A&W root beer. I want to show you A&W root beer. I always wonder why they called A&W. Now, it could be the last names are start with an A and start with a W. Could be. Look at their original logo of A and W root beer. It's a hole in the sky, or a target, which is also symbolic of the hole in the sky, with another dot in the middle and an arrow hitting the bull's eye, or the eye of the bull, etc. This is all very symbolic of ancient myths and legends and stuff, right? The arrow is the beam. It is the beam that shoots up. There's actually some tribal legends, many, that talk about how there was this ancient hero that shot an arrow up into the center of the sky, etc. That's what you're looking at. And then they show you the alpha and the omega, which is A and W. All right, so check this out. Symbolically, there was a historian named Plato, which is the same name as Pluto. That's what he named himself after. Plato wrote a book called Timaeus. And here it says, in Timaeus, he explains that the two, one moment. I'm super sorry. I need water. He explains that the two bands that form the soul of the world, he's being dead serious, right? Plato is quoted across academics. It's just that they treat Plato and all these other ancient historians like a salad bar. They only take the parts that they like. They throw away all the rest of it. And they go, oh, they were right about this, but they were way wrong about this. Maybe they were right about everything, right? Anyways, or there's truth to everything. Plato says two bands that form the soul of the world cross each other like the letter X. Plato's analogy, along with several other examples of chi as a symbol, occur in Thomas Browne's discourse, The Garden of Cyrus. So here we have those two beams, or electrical arches, that cross one another at a central point at the middle of our world with a correlation or an association to a garden, right? These form what is known in ancient cultures, or the ancient world at large, as the soul of the world. Today, Western academics has taken away soul from the world, okay? They don't talk about the earth being alive. They don't talk about the earth or the universe being alive or having a soul or electricity very much, you know what I mean, running through everything, the ether, etc. But here you have a direct reference to the anode and cathode creating an electrical arc or arch, or an arc of the covenant that goes over the middle beam, creating an X. That middle beam, right, is coming from Mount Meru. This is also the he and the rho. If you ever see this symbol, if you're out and you see the drugstore, this is what it means. It's a symbol that means to heal, the healer. These are the first two letters in the Greek word or spelling for Christ, right? Which is akin to light and shiny and stuff like that. They put this in the middle of what looks like a chalice or a cup because it represents a toroidal field, which is what is created whenever you have this plasma reaching up into the heavens for so long, it starts to create what looks like the cup of Christ. It's also the very bottom portion of the peace sign, where the line goes down and then it splits off because there's these other two beams that are coming up. This could also be interpreted as the plasma volcano itself and the beam coming up out of it. Now, if we take that and we superimpose the hero, the he and the rho of Constantine, for example, we can see that this is a portion of what that is, and it symbolizes peace. It symbolizes healing, exactly like all of our other healing symbols. It is a central, for the most part, beam. It is a central column, like this one right here. The central column comes from Mount Meru. The anode and the cathode to either side create an electrical arc that spirals out, crosses at various intervals, and snakes its way up the tree of life, giving you the imagery of the snakes living in the tree of life from the book of Genesis. And then, of course, we have the wings at the top. Quite often it looks like wings, so they draw it as a thunderbird, the bluebird of happiness, etc. There's always a pole at the top because there is a circle at the top. It's not always two snakes. Sometimes they will draw it as one snake. This one literally has the letter V on it, which is the Vav. This is the Vav. Let me make that a little smaller. This is the Vav. This is the hook. This is the tent pole. This is Maui's hook. This is Jack's beanstalk, etc., and so on and so forth. This is and was at the center of our world. And it is shown, and it means to heal, right? Right here, you can actually see that they put that symbol, which the Red Hot Chili Peppers absolutely use as well, because they talk about this stuff all the time, but in song form, right? You can see they put the line Oh, that's too big. They put the line down. I want to zoom into it. Anyways, they put the line down, and they put this line over here, and they put this line over here. This is all cosmic symbolism that we see in the sky, and it means to heal. It means this is a place of healing. It is reciprocated in many of our ancient legends, in our religions, in our textbooks, everywhere. And this right here is a real life example of that, of what's happening. You have one tower on one side. These are two Tesla coils, and there's a guy wearing knight's armor, basically, a Faraday cage on around his body. But you have the two witnesses on either side of the island in the middle. This guy, symbolically, this is real life, but this guy right here represents the blue beam. He represents Truman. He represents that sky god that has two staffs on either side or whatever, right? All right. Oh man, I just got a birthday donation from Deborah Murray. Thanks, Deborah. I hope that this isn't too long-winded. Sometimes when it goes a while, I kind of feel like I'm rambling. So I hope you guys are all tracking. I hope, at least from time to time. Here's another version, another way that those beams of light are drawn in ancient Egypt. They're drawn like this. You can actually see it looks like a little power generator. The two arms reaching up into the sky and touching the hole in the sky. You can see the same thing in some of these other images here. Sometimes this one is one of my favorite ones. You can see the two legs are the anode and the cathode reaching up to the middle beam and then touching the eye in the sky, and then draw it like an eye in the sky. It's also a light, which gives you a lamp post type of entity that walks around, which is a modern day folklore horror myth called, what is it called? Lamphead? No, Siren Head, right? Well, there's Siren Head and Lamphead. They're basically modern myths that go back to this same type of imagery. All right, so Truman is out on the ocean. He's looking for his true love. His true love is the truth of the world he lives in, which is represented by all the little pieces he's put together his entire life of the apocalypse woman, of the red sky, of the red plasma above, of the world of magic, of the world of living and life and danger and excitement and love and passion, etc. And she can't wait. She's rooting him on. And believe me, if you feel like you're alone in the world and you're out there just living your path, there are people, I like to believe this, okay? I don't have anything to support this, but I like to believe that somewhere out there is a person that has this kind of a smile that loves you more than anything and is cheering you on through all of your trials and tribulations. Welcome, Alex. All right, so Truman is on a boat. The boat is called Santa Maria. What does that mean? It means saint, right? Saint, Santa, just like Santa Claus is Saint Claus or Saint Nicholas, Saint Nicholas. Santa Maria. Maria is the virgin woman who gives birth. She is without impurities. She represents that crystal clear lake of water that the blue beam comes up out of at the center of our world. As we were talking about earlier, the distilled water, the water with no impurities, right? It's virgin water, you could say. Now, Mary is directly related to the Proto-Indo-European root word mori, right? Mori means a body of water. Mary is also a body of water that emits a blue beam from time to time at the top of the world. Now, it's directly related to Mar. Mari just means my Mar, okay? Mar essentially also can mean to hinder, to offend, to forget, to neglect, to cause trouble, to confuse, etc., right? So these waters act as a boundary of forgetting. Almost like if you cross these waters, there is a forgetting that comes along with it. It's also directly related to the word marsh. Sage. Oh, hey, I like your picture. That's a cool picture. All right, so it's directly related to marsh. Now, we talked about how the oceans will one day disappear, getting sucked up into the sky. Thank you, 1111. I love it. Thank you, Sage. God, thank you. Marsh, directly related to the word Mary, which means ocean water, sea water, etc. When you take that water away, you get a marsh, a tract of water soaked or partially flooded, wet and swampy ground. That's what the oceans become. They become swampland, and then eventually when they dry out, deserts, huge deserts. All right, so we go back into the moon where Paul Giamatti, I love this dude. I love him in every movie. I love that guy. Anyways, he says, we're going to be accessing the weather program now. Why? Because Truman's going to encounter that perpetual storm that we talked about earlier. And he says, no, I think we're going to localize the storm over the boat. So there is a localized storm that's always there, and it's around the mysterious island. You can actually see, they reference this in Kong, Skull Island, right? Skull Island is a great example of a symbolized version of the North Pole. So Christoph says, don't worry, he's not going to die. He'll be too afraid. He'll turn around. So that storm in the middle of our world acts as a natural barrier to scare people away. They don't want to go through that storm. And if you read about these inner earth, hollow earth accounts of people who have gone and transcended the northern barriers of the Arctic Circle, and they kept on going, they encountered a storm each and every time. So he says, there she blows. That's appropriate too, because this is where the wind comes from. This is where our wind comes from. Our earth breathes, okay? Our air, the reason that we have air and wind and stuff is because the earth is breathing, okay? That comes from the inside of the earth. That air rushes out, it comes out or whatever, and it causes currents and stuff like that. Now, they show you a close-up of Truman. This is how you know he's at the North Pole. This is his compass. It's a close-up shot of the compass. Keep your eye on the compass. Now the boat is rocking and stuff, but they're gonna show you the compass spinning out of control. I don't know if you could tell. Like, keep your eye on one number, right? So let's say 150 over here onto the right by my head, right? Keep your eye on that one. So 150 is moving. It's way over there on the other side. Basically, the compass is spinning around because he's at the North Pole, right? And that's what happens when you get close to the North Pole. His mast, his post, is hit by lightning from above, just like in Back to the Future, how we talked about, you know, the symbolism for the lightning god and whatnot, hitting the pole god symbolism. All right, so Truman doesn't like the water. He gets hit. His boat gets hit by the lightning. He falls off from his boat. And he says, is that the best you can do? Okay, Lieutenant Dan. That's what he totally reminds me of Lieutenant Dan. Remember that from Forrest Gump? Lieutenant Dan's like, you call this a storm? Right? You can't have fear. That is a prerequisite. If you want to be a fractalverse traveler, you've got to laugh in the face of danger, knowing that there is no such thing as death, knowing that you can risk it and you'll be fine in the grand scheme of things. So that's what these characters typically do. They laugh in the face of death. He says, you're going to have to kill me. And he yells. He is committed. He's done being distracted. He is showing God or the powers that be or whatever, I'm going. No matter what you do, this I have decided. I am resolute. He says, you're going to have to kill me. So they're all watching him on the TV. He ties himself up. Look how tiny that little wheel was that whole time. It's so tiny. So he's tied himself to the boat. He's committed. He's stuck to the boat. He's sort of doing the hands up symbolism there. That's why I took that picture. And the storm stops. He makes it through the perpetual storm, right? Which is usually when you get to your destination, which is when you arrive at the hidden island. Or if you're at the island leaving, this is when you see the rest of the world, basically, right? In Truman's case, it's going to be the edge of his world. Now you can see him leaning over like this, and I sort of did a spoiler just then, but you can see he represents the blue beam, which is also the kachinas of various sorts, right? He represents Kokopelli. That beam that shoots up, when it starts to fluctuate, will bend. It'll start to become wavy and bend and stuff in the air. Kokopelli is also related to the island at the North Pole. It comes from the cocoa, just like we broke down earlier, right? How kaka or kaka, cocoa, chicken, same exact type of stuff, right? Cocoa bean, Kokopelli, right? Titicaca, the land or the lake. I'm sure it always makes everybody laugh, right? Titicaca, I know. But that's what that means. That's where it comes from. People don't understand these roots and these origins. Kokopelli is the pole from cocoa, or from between the two barriers, the 88, as we talked about, the boundary stones, the pillars of Hercules. That is Kokopelli. And that's what Truman is doing right now. He's doing this sort of hunchback, bending over Kokopelli look. All right, so he's in his boat. He's going, and it kind of looks like he's out on the open sea, but as he gets a little closer, you can see a shadow pops up, and pow! He runs into the sky. Now check this out. if you thought it was amazing before, and I want to give a huge thank you again to Mary Cronin for your donation, and Deborah and everybody else who's been giving me little birthday presents. Thank you so much. Very much. Where was I? Okay, so check this out. We're going to get deep. We're going to get even deeper. I love how we just keep peeling away layers. And those of you who are with me understand the next layer a little bit better. I love that. So hold on to your thinking caps, because here we go. Truman hits the edge of his world, right? He gets to the place where the sky meets the ocean, right? In the movie, we just say, oh, okay, it's just a dome, it's just made up, etc. But it reflects real life. Now, his entire life, he's been looking through that barrier, right? And I talk about this analogy all the time. Remember how you used to go to the mall back in the 90s or something and they had those weird blurry pictures you had to stare into for a really long time, and then it would pop out like 3D pictures or something? That is what we do, all of us, when we look up at the stars. You're looking at a physical structure, but you're looking through it and imagining that it goes on and things are popping out at you like planets and stars, and some are closer and some are further away, etc. Not true. I'm sorry. I don't like absolute statements, but it's not true for me. Okay. That is a solid structure. Okay. And we have been staring at it, pretending to be staring beyond it. You're not staring beyond it. You're looking right at it. Truman walks up to this sky. He's looking almost like he's looking through it, because that's what he's been doing. He assumes it goes on and on and on, but it's an illusion. He walks up and puts his hand up to it and touches the sky. God, man, that's so deep for me. It gets deeper than that, because the place where the sky meets the ocean is in our history, right? So there's places that you can find tribal stories. So then he's trying to break it. He wants to break the sky open. He wants out. He wants out of this world. He's like, let the sky fall. Break it. Smash it. Now, Jim Carrey is being very dainty with the wall here because it's just a prop. And actually, he puts a couple of dents on it sometimes if you look closely. But he's upset. He's a prisoner. He's stuck in this world. He doesn't want to be stuck in this world and told what to do and influenced left and right. He wants to live up to his name, Jim Carrey, the free man, or true man, right? Now check this out. This is from C.S. Lewis's The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, another work of so-called fiction from the Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe series, which is pretty deep. It says, where sky and water meet, where the waves grow sweet. Doubt not, Reapy Cheap, to find all you seek, there is the utter east. Oh my God, if you follow my channel, this is probably just sending out all kinds of little sparks and flags for you, right? Where the sky and the water meet is exactly what you just saw on the Truman Show. There is a physical barrier to our world, which is the sky or the firmament or the vault of the heavens, etc., and it bends down and it touches the waters or the oceans that surround us, where the sky and the water meet, where the waves grow sweet. Well, the waves growing sweet means that the ocean's salinity, it becomes clear. That ocean water becomes drinkable. It becomes sweet. Bitter water is water with salt and impurities and stuff in it, right? Sweet water is pure water. It's distilled. It's straight, freshly made water from the earth. Doubt not. He says, doubt not. Get rid of your doubts. Get rid of your fears. You can't do that, right? To find all you seek. Don't doubt. There is the utter east. Now remember, east, which way is east? You already know, right? East is up, west is down, or inside of the earth. Now, here's another quote from the same one. This is The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. You see that? C.S. Lewis, right? Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe. Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Now, check this out. Another part of the book says this. Let me make it bigger so you can read along. And of course, as it always does in a perfectly flat place without trees, it looked as if the sky came down to meet the grass. They got the strangest impression that here, at last, the sky really did come down and join the earth. A blue wall. Very bright, but real and solid. More like glass than anything else. And soon they were quite sure of it. It was very near now. This is from the same book where they talk about, at least in this fictitious world that doesn't exist and never could in any reality, which is what we're made to believe, the sky comes down and touches the earth, right? Don't believe fiction? Well, let's look at a real tribal story of the Iroquois. This is not fiction. This is their history that we interpret as being fiction because it's too fantastic for us today, because we apply today's world and today's teachings to this ancient story. Now, check this story of the Iroquois out. This legend developed in olden times. Now, I'm going to give you a heads up real quick. The short version of this Iroquois story, 3 brothers, those 3 beams, right? 3 brothers go chasing after the sun. They wanted to see where the sun goes when it dies, and they come to a place where the sky touches the earth or the ocean. And they figured out that the sun goes underneath the ocean or these waters. Now let's check out the story. This legend developed in olden times when not many people were about. 3 brothers who were not married spent their lives hunting. When young, they enjoyed the excitement of hunting, but as they grew older, they seemed to lose the pleasure of the sport. The youngest brother suggested that for a new experience, they walk to the edge of the earth, where the sky comes down and touches the big sea of salt water. At the western side of the salt water, this world is an island. So at the westernmost extremity of this world, there's an island. Westernmost means center, about to go into the earth. That's the westernmost, is where the inner earth meets the outer earth, or the shell part where we live. All right, so we have a story about these brothers who talk about the sky touching the ocean, right? Let's go back to the Dawn Treader. I want to read you one more interesting correlation real quick, if you don't mind, if you have time. It says here, so at last we came to the top of a mountain. Okay, I'm with you, Mount Meru, I got you, Rupus Nigra. Came to the top of a mountain I'd never seen before, and on top of this mountain, there was a garden. Imagine that, the Garden of Eden, right? Trees and fruit and everything. In the middle of it, there was a well, a spring, a well, an opening that goes down into the earth, right? I knew it was a well because you could see the water bubbling up from the bottom of it, but it was a lot bigger than most wells because it's a hollow earth entrance. Like a very big round bath with marble steps going down into it, the water was clear as anything. The water was clear as anything. Remember this. Very important. And I thought that if I could get there and bathe, it would ease the pain in my leg. So this character had a messed up leg. He wanted to go down into this magical well to restore his leg so it wouldn't have pain, right? But the lion told me I must undress first. Interesting. So let's see what happens when he gets undressed. You will have to let me undress you. This is Aslan, the lion, speaking. I was afraid of his claws, but I can tell you, now this kid realizes that because he's already naked, he realizes that Aslan is saying, I have to rip your skin off of you. I have to flay your skin before you go down into this well. Check this out. This is going to make a crazy connection. So Aslan says, you have to let me undress you. I was afraid of his claws, I can tell you, but I was pretty nearly desperate now. So I lay flat down on my back to let him do it, to undress him, right? The very first tear that he made was so deep that I thought he had gone right into my heart. And when he began pulling the skin off, it hurt worse than anything I've ever felt. The only thing that made me able to bear it was just the pleasure of feeling the stuff peel off. You know, if you've ever picked a scab or a sore place, it hurts like a bilio, but it's such fun to see it coming away. Now imagine that. Keep that exact same reference, right? That's a fictional story written by C.S. Lewis that doesn't exist and it's not real, allegedly, right? Where he wanted to go into the Fountain of Youth or leave this world, basically. And Aslan, the magical lion, is like, cool, I have to take off your skin because your skin is all messed up and poisonous. So let's go back to the story of the 3 brothers from the Iroquois tribe. Let's see what happens to them when they do leave the sky. Or leave the dome of the sky, which is what happens to them. So there's some sort of God-type figure asking about their bodies, and they're like, oh, well, we have fine bodies, right? So they leave the sky. Here's what happens. Let me give you the short version. They get to the place where the sky meets the ocean, but they see that the sky is actually solid, and that it is lifting up from time to time and then dipping down into the ocean, which creates a moment where they can run underneath it and they can leave the world, which is also definitely tied into some other ancient historical truths and accuracies that certain religious men who went on these explorations, how they say they saw underneath the lid of the world. They could see under the rim of the world and see out there into the cosmos. Anyways, that's what happens to these Iroquois brothers, allegedly. And they go under the sky. One of them gets crushed. Okay, there was 3 of them. One of them disappears. He gets crushed and dies. The other 2 make it. And they come into this place that's all white. Imagine that. Space is white, right? They come into this place that's all white. They go up a huge hill and they talk to this sort of godlike, family member that they have. And he says, what about your bodies? And they say, well, we have good bodies. He says, you do not speak the truth. The great man answered, you don't speak the truth. Hawenu, which is the name, and I know all about your bodies. One of you, I'm going to make this smaller so we don't have to do all that. Let's see. He says, one of you must lie down and I will purify him and then the other. Exactly like the character in the Dawn Treader had to lie down in front of Aslan while Aslan rips off his skin. Watch this. These brothers lie down because they say that their bodies are not pure, right? They just came into the heavens. They said your bodies are not pure. So he lies down. It says, my brother lays down, and this guy placed a small shell to his own lips, put it on the brother's mouth. He also tapped him on the neck and sealed the shell with clay. Then he began to skin the brother. He took apart the muscles, he scraped the bones, he took out the organs and washed them, and then he built the man up again. Then he loosened the clay and rubbed his neck. He did this with both of his brothers, and they sat up and said, it seems as if we just woke up from a really invigorating sleep. And he says, every power of your bodies has been renewed. So now I will test you. This is the exact same story that you read with me in the Dawn Treader of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which also, not only does it correlate to real life Iroquois stories about our actual real cosmology in our real world, just like the Truman Show is fictional, but it has very real and true elements about our real geography and our real cosmology and the world that we live in. All right, so Truman metaphorically just starts to walk onto the water. He's at the edge of the world. He sees the stairway, which is going to take him up into the sky, symbolically, right? It's sort of like the stairway to heaven symbolism. And then Christoph says, I want to talk to him. Now you can see the little bubble dome world right there. That is our world. This window you saw in The Giver, right? This is the exact same type of scene as in The Giver, when the giver of memories gives to the receiver of memories and whatnot, right? So he sees Truman. Truman opens up the hole in the sky, basically, which is the apocalypse. The apocalypse is happening. Christoph is like Truman, and he sounds like the voice of God, right? But it's not really God. It's just this guy up in the sky. He says, you can talk. I can hear you. I am the creator of a television show. Truman says, then who am I? And he says, you're the star. He is the star. Everyone watches him from every point in the world when that blue beam shoots up as a sky pillar, as a support pillar of this world, as a column that touches the earth to the sky. He says, who am I? You're the star. He is the star of Bethlehem. That's why above the place where Jesus is born, it's not just usually a star, but it's a star with like a spotlight shining down from it, right? That's the blue beam. He says, you're the star. Truman's like, was nothing real, right? That's how we feel. Was nothing real? Like there's so much deceit, so much. And he says, you were real. You were what brought the rest of this fakeness to life. You're what made it important, which is you, which is us who have that signature, that energetic signature. We are what Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the thing that is different about the world, and that's what makes the world exciting. So, for me, that's good news. It tells you you're born for such a time as this. He says there's no more truth out there than there is in the world that I created for you. And I believe that this is also probably very true. Everything is fractal. There's good, bad, and everywhere in between, wherever we go, right? But Truman is not trying to escape like all of the falsities and whatnot. Truman is simply trying to explore and walk his own path instead of others influencing his path to make him go where they want him to go, right? The same lies, the same deceit are beyond this world and others. I'm paraphrasing. He says, you never had a camera in my head. You never had a camera in my head, right? I don't know. He says, that's why you can't leave. You see, Truman might actually be a camera, basically. That's a whole different story because you all might be a form of camera. Anyways, he said, that's why you can't leave. I've been watching you your whole life. So Christoph is maybe 10 years older than Truman in real life. How can he be watching him his entire life, right? It's because there's a time differential between the time that exists here in this world where everything is sped up and our lifespans shrink, right? We experience time very quickly. Out there, they don't have all that pressure and stuff that is shortening our lifespans and the sundial and the stars and clock above us, circling around. They live for a very long time. So time is much slower, more laid back and kicked back. You got lots of time to do whatever you want out there in the heavens or within the inner recesses of the earth. Up here, time goes by really quickly. He says, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. So he's going to cover all of them. He smiles. I love it. He has no fear. He has shed and cast off and faced all of his fears so that he can ultimately leave and break the loop of his life so that he can live up to his name as Jim Carrey, as the free man, so that he can live up to his name as Truman, the true man and the truth seeker. So he does his best Jesus impersonation. He takes a bow. He bows before God, basically. Essentially, whenever the sky opens, people bow. They drop down. And then he gets sucked up into the sky and he leaves and he goes into the beyond. Now, on our side, it looks dark, right? But in reality, it's probably very shining and shimmering and white and stuff. So on the other side, his relatives, all of those people that we have forgotten about because we have this veil of forgetfulness called Maya, they're all excited. They're cheering. They can't wait to meet you. They can't wait to give you hugs and kisses with open arms. This is the concept of meeting your loved ones after you die in heaven, where they're all waiting for you or whatever, right? This is also just everyone that is rooting for us to break free. This is me. God, man, this is me. I would rush right up to you and give you a big old hug if this was me, right? Same thing. And that is the Truman Show. Man, was that deep? Gosh, I feel like that was up there with like the Monty Python with information. There's so much information. And hey, man, today's my birthday. Today is the 7th of September. Today's my birthday. Today is my little celebration day, and this is what I wanted to do. This is what makes me happy. Talking about these types of truths that I feel are more important than how's the weather, what's the gossip, what's the news, etc. I'd rather spend my time on my day talking about things like this with all of you so that we can exercise our creativity, so that we can think outside of the box. All right. Well, I hope you guys had a great time. Thank you so much, everybody that gave me a little birthday present donation. I get gas, I could pay bills, I can make my ends meet. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, go check out my website, www.JayDreamerZ.com. Always adding to it, always making it more and more amazing. And it's got all the information that I talk about here, but there's all these visuals and stuff that you can just go and reference anytime you want. Also on my website, there's file sharing. So if you've ever wanted to send me a picture and say, hey, check this out, or a video or something, you can do that. Everyone's saying goodbye in the chat. I love it. Everyone's like, oh my God, he's wrapping it up. Yes, I am. All right. So anyways, check out my website. There's lots of new things being added. There's lots of cool free stuff to check out. You can see all of the Good Vibe Tribe's beautiful works of art, all kinds of amazing things on my website. My book is sweet. If you like the Plasma Apocalypse, you've got to get my book. Check that out. I love you guys. I love all the love I'm being shown in the chat right now. Let's blow it up. Blow up the chat with all the good vibes. I'm going to put a bunch of little heart emojis just to join in. Yes. Oh my God. Look I'm getting some donations and stuff. Everybody's amazing. Yeah, thank you. It is a happy birthday. Gosh, thank you all. I appreciate you. Thank you. I'm going to be graceful and humble like Truman, take my bow, and I'm going to roll the credits. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ, saying good vibes and goodbye.
So hard to fade away. I try so hard to fade away, but something's forcing me to stay. It'd be easier for me if I turn away to flee. Oh, but there's something holding on, the way of being long gone. There's so many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Far too many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. I know I should have done this, should have quit this long ago. Can't stand another heartbreak, but it's time to let it go. It'd be easier for me if I turn away to flee. Oh, but there's something holding on, the way of being long gone. There's so many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Far too many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake There's so many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Far too many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up.
Who are you in this vast multiverse?
Your powers collide.